Chapter 2774. On this day, the morning light shone brightly. Lin soon opened the door of Cloud Guard House as usual, placed the rocking chair polished from dragon-shaped wood in front of the door, and then lay lazily on it. His body stretched out, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he seemed to have fallen asleep. His aura seemed to be faintly discernible. The warm and gentle sunlight shone down, causing his handsome face to be suffused with a layer of gentle light. This lazy bum opens the door on time every day, but he doesn't do anything. It's a waste of his good appearance. Haha, to be able to live a carefree life like this, he can be said to be carefree. I originally intended to introduce my niece to him, but this guy is too lazy. I've never seen a young man as lazy as him in my life. How can he achieve anything on the great Tao like this? In the streets, many neighbors noticed Lin soon, and they were used to it. They discussed for a while and then went to do their own things. Lin soon's figure remained motionless. Within his body, the various great Tao profundities were like a vast operating world that circulated ceaselessly, and it displayed all sorts of shocking scenes. All of this was carried out in silence. In his imperial life world, the chaos tree swayed, and ancient traces of chaos emerged and fused with Lin soon's cultivation, causing the power of the great Tao he grasped to show a charm of returning to its original essence. The imperial ancestor realm was also called ancestral atavism. The so-called ancestral atavism was the original and primitive meaning. Lin soon's cultivation had already reached the extreme perfection of the ancestral atavism realm. Others were the ancestor of one Tao, but he could be called the ancestor of all Taos. Every great Tao could derive unimaginable ancestral atavism realm laws. Now, he was only a step away from the immortal Tao, and he only needed an epiphany to be able to rise rapidly. However, he had been waiting for this opportunity for several years. Although he occasionally had a whim, he vaguely caught a trace of a sign. But in the end, it was too vague and ethereal. In the beginning, Lin soon was quite depressed, but now he had completely let go of it. He was no longer obsessed with it, and he no longer pondered and deduced blindly. The fortune of the great Tao couldn't be forced. After settling down in Cloud Guard House, he put aside all his thoughts and started to experience things outside of the great Tao. The world was formed by all things and all living beings. This alleyway was a corner of the world. There were the troubles of the world, the faces of all living beings, their own happiness, anger, sorrow, and resentment, as well as their own difficulties and struggles. The affairs of the world were like a torrent, and all living beings were struggling to cross it. It was also at this moment that Lin soon realized what Xingjia Buddha had said when he tried to prove the Tao. When my Tao is proven, I will understand the suffering of all living beings. This sort of suffering was the difficulty, obsession, and negative karma that no one could struggle free from while walking on the Grand Tao. As long as there was a desire, there would be a stubbornness. Stubborn people were trapped in a cage. But if there was no obsession, it would be easier for one's state of mind to become unstable and lost. Therefore, the first 3 stages of the Emperor's Road were Emperor's Heart disaster. Without attachment to the outside, formless in the body, boundless in the heart. Only by breaking through the difficulty of the monarch's heart could one reach the minute subtlety in the profound opening realm, attain divinity in the ethereal opening realm, and be lawless in the void opening realm. There is no law nor heaven. It was equivalent to breaking free from the shackles of the great Tao laws of a world. Even if one was placed in a completely different great Tao law world, one could still cultivate and prove one's Tao. In that case, he would be able to advance to the void refinement, Tao integration, and ancestral awakening. These were the 9 levels of the Emperor's path. On this path, Lin soon had reached the pinnacle. He had an invincible foundation and transcended the power of the past and present. However, it was clearly not an easy task to break through to this level. Lin soon didn't know what kind of opportunity other immortals had to prove their Tao. In fact, their experiences were destined to be of no help to him. Because on the Great Tao everyone sought different things. The opportunity to prove the immortal Tao was also completely different. For example, in this world, Emperor's Path legacies were common, but immortal legacies were almost non-existent. This was because the immortal realm involved the mysteries of the various Great Tao laws. The Great Tao laws were numerous and of various grades. For example, people at the heavenly longevity realm comprehended different Great Tao laws, and the immortal laws they condensed were also different. As a result, the power they could display was also vastly different. Killing a heavenly longevity realm cultivator who had grasped the immortal laws of the earth was far easier than killing a heavenly longevity realm cultivator who had grasped the immortal laws of the heaven. All of this made it extremely difficult for immortals to leave behind any legacies. Even if they did leave behind legacies, they would only be suitable for their own cultivation. For others, they wouldn't be able to use it as a reference. Lin Sun had specifically asked senior sister Jun Huan about this. Jun Huan's answer was simple: this path can only be explored by yourself. Others' experiences and insights are actually a burden. Using them as a reference is more harmful than beneficial. This also meant that to step onto the immortal Tao, one could only do it himself. Lin Sun had thought a lot over the years. He had pondered, and tried to find out. In the end, it didn't help at all. Instead, he fell into a cycle of self-obsession. Therefore, he gave up on everything and cut off his obsession. He no longer thought, no longer pondered, no longer yearned, and no longer sought. Every day, he would lazily lie in his rocking chair and observe the chaos of the world. He would experience what it was like to run around and search for answers. There was a different feeling in his heart. Spring passed and autumn came. Just like that, half a year passed. On this day, a crisp child's voice rang out from afar. A little girl with pigtails said, "Mom, can't you help me pick up the jade hairpin?" "No, Nua, how old are you? You can't even pick up a jade hairpin? What's the use of your hands?" A woman, who was busy in her shop, scolded her angrily. "But my hands are full of spiritual fruit. If I pick up the jade hairpin, what should I do with these spiritual fruits? Mom, please help me." The little girl named Nua pleaded. "Can't you pick up the spiritual fruits if you put them down?" The woman said impatiently. Nua looked at the red spiritual fruits in her hands and then at the jade hairpin that fell on the ground. She was in a dilemma. At this time, Lin Sun, who was lying in the rocking chair, suddenly laughed. "You can only pick it up if you put it down." The conversation between Nua and her mother was ordinary and sloppy. But for Lin Sun, this conversation was like a thunderclap piercing his ears and enlightening him. It was also like a ray of light piercing through the haze in his heart. "Your mother is right," he said with a smile. No was stunned and immediately said fiercely, "Big lazy worm, you are also a big bad guy." Lin Sun said with a smile, "Why am I a big bad guy? You have hands and feet. Can't you help me?" No said angrily. Lin Sun was speechless. He stood up, picked up the hairpin for the little girl, and inserted it into her black hair. Then he rubbed her little head and said, "I really should thank you. Why don't you tell me what your wish is? Maybe I can to help you realize it." Nua rolled his eyes. "A lazy bum like you still wants to help me fulfill my wish? Save it." As he spoke, he turned around and was about to return to his shop. But soon after, she retreated and stretched out her hands, which were full of red fruits, and said in a clear voice, "Big lazy worm, you helped me after all, so I won't be ungrateful. I'll treat you to a fruit, but remember, you can only choose one." Lin Sun's smile became more and more cheerful. He picked up a bright red and plump spiritual fruit and stuffed it into his mouth to chew. "Ah, this fruit is so sweet." Nua immediately said proudly, "I got up early in the morning and picked this from the mountains outside the city. Only I know about that place. The spirit fruits growing there are big and beautiful, and they are also very delicious." If you want to eat them, I'll take you to pick them tomorrow. Lin Sun shook his head. I'm not a child. How can I go with you to pick fruits? Don't you see that I have to guard the shop? No rolled his eyes again and said, You're really a lazy worm. You want to eat the spiritual fruit but don't want to move. You're hopeless. As he said, he returned to the shop. Lin Sun smiled, returned to the front of the shop, and lay comfortably in the rocking chair. His state of mind was completely different from before. Only by putting it down could he pick it up. Only by giving up could he get the Tao. There had never been a moment when Lin Sun's state of mind was so relaxed and transcendent, as if he had seen through a maze and broken a shackle. He couldn't help but want to find No again, and ask her if she had any wishes so that he could help her realize them. But in the end, Lin Sun held back. I'll help them when I have a chance, Lin Sun thought in his heart. Nua and her mother opened a shop, which specialized in selling some mountain treasures. They were not precious, but they were common. Naturally, the business was not good. His mother was just a cultivator in the longevity calamity realm. She was busy making a living. The eternal void source crystals she earned were barely enough to sustain her and Nua's cultivation need. Their lives were not hard to come by, but they could be considered poor. Lin Sun had seen all of this a long time ago. He even knew that Nua's father lost his life in a battle a long time ago. Nua was brought up by her mother from infancy, so the little girl had no impression of her father until now. Lin Sun shook his head and didn't think about it anymore. He began to cultivate, and his qi began to run quietly. Bang! Not long after, the tree of chaos rooted in the life imperial realm suddenly exploded. The trunk and branches turned into countless turbulent torrents of chaos, and then were refined into the life imperial realm little by little. The law of chaos nurtured by the chaos tree had brought immeasurable benefits to Lin Sun over the years, allowing the grand Tao laws he grasped to be refined to their original essence. But for Lin Sun, the existence of the chaos tree had become an invisible obstacle on his path to immortality. For a long time, Lin Sun had always hoped that the tree would transform with him, and it might turn into an immortal chaos tree in the future. But now, he understood that if he didn't abandon this thought, he would become a burden. Not long after, Lin Sun had a strange feeling. When the tree of chaos was completely refined, he could clearly feel that his life imperial realm was being nurtured miraculously. The entire imperial realm seemed to be filled with a chaotic and heavy aura. The body and mind are free of worries. You can only gain by giving up something. The college entrance examination is over. There will be an update tonight as a reward. Chapter 2775. The Chaos Tree was very precious enough to make all the emperors go crazy. But at this moment, Lin Sun didn't feel any pain or regret after refining the Chaos Tree. Instead, he felt relaxed. Tao came from the heart, law came from the body. Since he'd started cultivating until now, even though his body and mind had carried accomplishments in the Grand Tao that far exceeded an ordinary Grand Tao, weren't the experiences and gains he'd obtained from his past burdens in a different sense? If he wanted to break through, he had to abandon his past experiences and learn from scratch. Only then could he take that new step. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun decided to refine the primordial Tao tree as well. This tree was a supreme treasure from the last epoch. When used with the origin scripture, he could comprehend all the supreme inheritances and Tao profundities from the last epoch. This brought immeasurable benefits to Lin Sun's cultivation. It allowed his cultivation to support two epochs, allowing him to look down on those in the same realm. Such a treasure could make even immortals fight to the death for it. Thinking back to when he was in the gods' secret realm, many immortals came one after another to fight for the greatest fortune of the last epoch. To Lin Sun, the primordial Tao tree was indeed amazing. It could be called one of the top treasures he had. In the past, He planned to continue comprehending the primordial Tao tree after he reached the immortal realm and experienced the immortal Tao of the last epoch. But now Lin Sun came to his senses. Learning from the immortal Tao would only bring more harm than good. He had to rely on himself to seek this Tao. Since that was the case, he might as well give it up. He had to completely cut off those thoughts of preparing for a rainy day and let himself be free of worries. Boom! In his life Emperor world, green light filled the sky. Thousands of green branches swayed. The primordial Tao tree shook violently and was being refined bit by Lin Sun. This god tree, which could be called the treasure of the last epoch, was cracking inch by inch. Branches fell off and leaves withered. Different from refining the chaos tree, Lin Sun spent a whole year to slowly erase the primordial Tao tree, turning it into surging primordial energy that merged into Lin Sun's cultivation. In this year, he stayed in the Cloud Guard house as usual. He spent most of his time lying in the rocking chair. The neighbors had long become accustomed to it and did not find it strange. No one knew that Lin Sun's cultivation had undergone a silent transformation in the past year. Lin Sun could feel that after absorbing the power of the Chaos Tree and the Primordial Tree of Myriad Tao, his imperial life realm had undergone a tremendous change. Chaotic and primitive aura seethed and suffused the air. It was like when the world had just been split apart. Within the vast imperial world, the sun, moon, stars, mountains, rivers, and everything else seemed to have returned to the chaos, and they obtained an extreme form of improvement and nourishment amidst the aura at the beginning of the world. His cultivation did not change. But Lin Sun knew that his cultivation had undergone an incredible sublimation and transformation. The Tao was like the primordial chaos. If one were to say that the ancestral atavism realm was to search for the original mystery of the great Tao, then at this moment, Lin Sun's cultivation was like the most primitive chaos, sitting on the primordial world. At this moment, Lin Sun was completely enlightened. His whole body was light as a feather, just like what Buddhism said about cutting off the fetters of the past. The Great Way was like him, and he was like the Great Way. It was indescribable. In the rocking chair, he quietly opened his eyes. At this moment, the world suddenly darkened, and the rules and aura of the Great Way distributed between heaven and earth stagnated for a moment, as if they were frightened. But it was only for a moment, and then it returned to normal. On the streets, the bustling figures and all kinds of people didn't notice it at all. I am like the Great Way, undetectable. A smile appeared on Lin Sun's face. He leisurely stretched his waist and got up from the rocking chair. My flowers have bloomed, when will the butterflies come? Lin Sun didn't care. For him, the immortal path was destined to walk into a trap in the future. It had been more than a year since he arrived at the Cloud Guard house. There was only more than a year left before the ancestral court of Yuan Church recruited its successor. Lazy bugger. Just as Lin Sun was about to turn back to the Cloud Guard house, a clear voice sounded, and Noa Noa with a braid of sheep horns ran over quickly. What's the matter? Lin Sun asked with a smile. In this year, Noa Noa had also grown a lot taller. She had lost her childlike innocence and gained some liveliness of a young girl. Noa raised her face and said proudly, "My mother said that she has collected enough money and she will send me to the Spirit Sword Mansion to cultivate after a while." Lin Sun was stunned. The Spirit Sword Mansion was located in a deep mountain more than 30,000 miles away from Cold Moon City, and it was guarded by several Emperor Ancestor realm figures. In terms of foundation, it was not even as good as the last immortal force, so Lin Sun didn't care about it at all. But in the eyes of the practitioners at the bottom of Cold Moon City, it was already a great blessing to be able to enter the Spirit Sword Mansion to cultivate. "Then I have to congratulate you," Lin Sun said with a smile. Noa Noa laughed and said, "I just come to tell you that if you are as diligent as me, you can also cultivate. If you are still a lazy bugger, you can't be saved in this life." With that, she turned around and left, adding a different kind of beauty to her lively figure. Young people didn't know the taste of worry. Lin soon thought for a while, and came to the shop opened by Nuo Nuo's mother while she was away. Nuo Nuo's mother was called Gu Yunshan. Although she was dressed in plain clothes, she looked quite beautiful. She ran the shop alone and raised Nuo Nuo, so she was very busy every day. But today Gu Yunshan sat there in a daze, which seemed very unusual. Seeing Lin Sun come, Gu Yunshan couldn't help but be surprised and said with a smile, "It's really strange that a lazy bugger like you should take the initiative to visit. This is the first time." Lin Sun also smiled. He knew that in the eyes of his neighbors, he was an extremely naughty guy, but he didn't mean any harm. "As far as I know, it will cost a lot to go to the Spirit Sword Mansion to cultivate," Lin Sun said after thinking for a while. It was just a sentence, but it seemed to hit Gu Yunshan's heart. Her expression changed for a while and she sighed. "Nuo Nuo is already 10 years old. If I don't send her to the Spirit Sword Mansion to cultivate, I'm afraid she won't have a great future in this life. I don't want her to be like me, guarding this shop for the rest of her life." Parents loved their children, and they had far-reaching plans. Obviously, Gu Yunshan had already thought about it clearly. She wanted to arrange a good future for Nuo Nuo. Lin Sun said, "So, are you going to sell this shop and send the money to the Spirit Sword Mansion?" Gu Yunshan was stunned. "How do you know?" Lin Sun said, "Our two shops are next to each other. A few days ago, someone came to your shop to talk about something, and I happened to hear it." Gu Yunshan looked gloomy and said, "I have no choice. I can't delay it any longer." Lin Sun handed a storage treasure to Gu Yunshan and said, "Nuo Nuo has helped me a lot. This is my gift. Don't tell her about it and don't sell this shop. Otherwise, if Nuo Nuo wants to come back in the future, she will be sad if she doesn't even have a home." After that, he turned around and left. Gu Yunshan was stunned. What was wrong with this lazy guy today? When she opened the storage bag, she was stunned. There was an unimaginable fortune in the storage bag. After a while, she recovered from the shock and looked at the door of the Cloud Guard house, only to find that the rocking chair had already been put away. Lin Sun, who was used to lying in the rocking chair and lazing around, was gone. Gu Yunshan picked up the storage bag and hurried to the door of the Cloud Guard house. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to return the storage bag to Lin Sun. The fortune was so amazing that she felt uneasy and worried about gains and losses. Don't refuse. This is for Nuo Nuo's cultivation. Compared with this money, Nuo Nuo's help is invaluable. Lin Sun's voice came from the Cloud Guard house. "Child, I will return the money. If I can't exchange it, let Nuo Nuo return it." Gu Yunshan took a deep breath and said firmly. Half a month later, Gu Yunshan closed the shop and walked out of Cold Moon City with Nuo Nuo. After a long trek, they arrived at the place where the Spirit Sword Mansion was located. The Spirit Sword Mansion was built on the top of the mountain, with a magnificent and solemn atmosphere. This made Gu Yunshan a little nervous. It was the first time for her to come to such a big force. "May I ask if you are fellow Taoist Gu Yunshan?" In front of the gate, a white-robed old man with a kind face stood there as if he was waiting for someone. When he saw Gu Yunshan and Nuo Nuo, he immediately revealed a warm smile and went forward to greet them personally. "Haha, this little girl must be Nuo Nuo. She is really beautiful and extraordinary. She will definitely shine brightly on the path of cultivation in the future." The white-robed old man looked at Nuo Nuo with undisguised admiration. Gu Yunshan and Nuo Nuo were stunned. How did the white-robed old man know their names? Moreover, he seemed to be waiting here specially. Before they could ask, the white-robed old man smiled and invited them to the Spirit Sword Mansion. Along the way, he explained to them all kinds of things about the Spirit Sword Mansion. This made them feel even more confused, and they felt like they were dreaming. This was the Spirit Sword Mansion, the holy land of cultivation in the hearts of countless cultivators in Cold Moon City. But now they were welcomed in like this? When they came to a magnificent and ancient hall, when the white-robed old man indicated that he wanted to take Nada as his disciple, Gu Yunshan couldn't help but ask, "Senior, may I ask your name?" The white-robed old man smiled and said, "I'm the master of the Spirit Sword Mansion." Just these words alone caused Gu Yunshan to feel as if she'd been struck by lightning, and she was stunned on the spot. No matter how she racked her brains, she'd never imagined that she and her daughter, Nuan Nua, would actually receive such special treatment. When she walked out of the Spirit Sword Mansion and was on the way back to Cold Moon City, Gu Yunshan, who was in a daze, suddenly thought of someone. Could it be him? When she thought up to here, Gu Yunshan went to the Cloud Guard house as soon as she returned to Cold Moon City. However, to her surprise, the Cloud Guard house was closed, and no one answered after knocking on the door for a long time. Such a situation had occurred in the past. But this time, Gu Yunshan's heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. She couldn't help but recall the young man that lay lazily on the rocking chair in the past. More updates. Ask for monthly votes. Chapter 2776. Under the misty white clouds in the sky, a treasured ship flew, crushing the waves of clouds and shuttling through it. "Senior sister, where are we going?" In the cabin, Lin Sun drank from a green gourd and asked casually. "To participate in the public selection of Yuan Sek's ancestral court, of course." Jun Huan lay comfortably on a piece of soft and snow-white beast skin like a lazy cat. Her straight and slender legs were crossed on the table, and her beautiful eyes were slightly narrowed while she didn't care about her image at all. As she spoke, she threw a jade slip to Lin Sun. "Take a good look at this jade slip. I'm going to sleep for a while." She turned over, her curvy buttocks and waist arched. Her clothes were pushed up and couldn't cover it, revealing a portion of her delicate snow-white skin. This scene was undoubtedly very erotic and charming. Lin Sun wanted to remind her to pay attention to her image, but in the end, he could foresee that if he opened his mouth, he would be teased again. After calming his mind, Lin Sun looked at the jade slip. In the quiet cabin, Jun Huan was sleeping soundly like a lazy cat. Lin Sun sat in front of the table and read the information in the jade slip. Vaguely, a faint fragrance filled the air. It was Jun Huan's body fragrance, like orchid and musk, refreshing the mind. After Lin Sun settled in the Cloud Guard house, Jun Huan left alone, saying that she wanted to inquire about some information related to Yuan Sek's ancestral court. He was gone for nearly 2 years. A few days ago, after Jun Huan returned, she directly set off with Lin Sun on the treasure ship and left New Moon City. After a long time, Lin Sun put down the jade slip and fell into deep thought. This time, the news of Yuan Sek's ancestral court recruiting descendants spread throughout the eternal world, causing a sensation and attention in all the major heavens. According to the information Jun Huan had inquired about, this time, there were nearly 100 Juetian ancestors participating in the selection, which could be said to be unprecedented. When Lin Sun saw this number, he couldn't help but be stunned. More than 100 Juetian ancestors. This was simply a shocking number. It should be known that in the 1st to 6th heavens, it was almost impossible to see Juetian ancestors. Even if one appeared, he would be taken away by the major forces of the 7th and 8th heavens in a very short time. In the past, when Luo Chong was in charge of the Luo clan, he had used up almost all of the Luo clan's resources to produce Luo Feng. In this 7th heaven, there is naturally no shortage of Ju-ing Emperor ancestors, but the number is pitifully small. They can be called rare existences. According to Lin Sun's knowledge, in the 12 Paradise, each immortal emperor clan had at most 1 or 2 Ju-xia Emperor ancestors. Moreover, these Ju-xia Emperor ancestors had proven their Tao many years ago, and some had even broken through to become immortal emperors. As for the 36 Blessed Lands, there had been quite a few Ju-shui patriarchs who had emerged in the past. However, they had to try their luck. Not every generation of disciples could produce someone like that. In other words, even if he searched the entire 7th heaven, he may not be able to gather hundreds of Ju-ing imperial ancestors. At the bottom of it all, cultivators that had attained such a realm were too few in the end. And the reason why there are hundreds of Ju-Xie emperor ancestors participating in the selection of the Yuan sect's ancestral court is that some of them are from the 8th heaven. Jun Huan has been collecting information for more than a year. At present, it is certain that 4 of the 10 immortal emperors of the 8th heaven will participate in this selection. These 4 are the Qi clan, Dongwang clan, Mu clan, and Zhongli clan. Among each immortal emperor clan, 6 or 7 Ju-Xie ancestor powerhouses will participate in the selection. Just from the number of Ju Shui's ancestors, it can be seen how big the gap is between the 7th heaven and the 8th heaven. Lin Sun didn't care about this. What he cared about was that each of the 4 immortal emperors participating in this selection was actually hostile to him. The Dongwang clan is the backer of the 4 eastern imperial clans. In the God's secret realm, Lin Sun killed many of the top figures of the younger generation of the 4 clans. The descendant of the Qi clan, Ju-Xie Emperor ancestor Qi Lingyun, is still suppressed in the abyssal sword cauldron. The Mu clan's Ju-Xie Emperor ancestor Mu Yi and the Zhongli clan's Ju-Xie Emperor ancestor Zhongli Shao both died in Lin Sun's hands in the God's secret realm. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder if the 4 immortal emperors also had the intention to target him. In addition to these, the Jade Slips also recorded information related to the selection of the Yuan sect's ancestral court. This selection will be presided over by a vice pavilion master and 3 elders of the Yuan sect's Yuanqing pavilion. The vice pavilion master's name is Feng Daoping, an immortal at the peak of the Nirvana God realm. This person's temperament is indifferent, and he has always been prestigious. The 3 elders are Dongwang Qing, Shao Wenyuan, and Li Zhen. When he saw the name Dongwang Qing, Lin Sun's eyes couldn't help but narrow. He didn't need to guess at all. He knew that this elder of the Yuanqing pavilion must be from the Dongwang clan. This is really a bit troublesome. If this old man secretly plays some tricks during the selection, I'm afraid there will be a lot of twists and turns, Lin Sun thought. However, all of this was within his expectations. The 4 ancestral halls transcend the world, but in these countless years, there have been many clansmen from the 10 immortal emperors who entered the 4 ancestral halls to cultivate. Dongwang Qing was clearly such an example. Junior brother, you can rest assured. In the selection of the successor, no one dares to mess around. Even someone like Dongwang Qing doesn't dare to violate the rules of the Yuan sect's ancestral court. Jun Huan had already woken up, turned over, and smiled at Lin Sun with a pair of beautiful eyes. Her voice was soft and pleasing to the ear. The reason why the 4 ancestral halls are so transcendent is because even the 10 immortal emperors have to follow the rules. In the past, there was also a big shot from the immortal emperors. When he was the elder of the 6th peak of the Yuan sect, he didn't hesitate to break the rules in order to fight for the peak master position. But guess what happened to him? Without waiting for Lin Sun to answer, Jun Huan said casually, he was killed. The Sky Pavilion, who is in charge of the criminal law, came forward and killed him in front of everyone. After this happened, the immortal emperors behind that person sent people to the Yuan sect's ancestral court overnight. They didn't come to punish him, but to apologize and hope to get the Yuan sect's forgiveness. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved. Killing an elder and making the immortal emperors behind the elder take the initiative to apologize. The foundation of the Yuan sect's ancestral court is really unimaginably terrifying. Junior brother, what you really need to worry about is how to not be eliminated in the selection. Jun Huan sat up straight, and her expression became serious. Now, everyone in the 7th heaven knows that you will participate in the selection of the Yuan sect's ancestral court. As long as you aren't stupid, you can guess that you will be the target of everyone when the selection begins. Lin Sun nodded. If the selection is done according to the rules, I won't be afraid of being killed. Jun Huan said, I'm just worried that they won't follow the rules. Lin soon narrowed his eyes. Didn't senior sister just say that even the 10 immortal emperors don't dare to violate the rules of the Yuan sect? Jun Huan said, the people of the Yuan sect's ancestral court don't dare to follow the rules for you, but it doesn't mean that the other immortal emperors don't dare to follow the rules. Before the selection ends, those who participate in the selection, like you, are not the descendants of the Yuan sect's ancestral court. If they use some sinister means in the selection, it will be impossible to guard against them. After a pause, she continued, what's more, I suspect that they will pay any price to kill you. Lin Sun's expression was calm. That depends on whether they have the ability to kill me. Jun Huan suddenly laughed and reached out to poke Lin Sun's forehead. Kid, you must be looking forward to killing when the time comes, right? Lin Sun also laughed. They have been hostile to me for many years, and now they want to stop me from entering the Yuan sect's ancestral court. I'm not a clay bodhisattva. How can I not be angry? If they really dare to do anything during the selection, I don't mind sending them one by one. At the end of the words, a touch of coldness flashed in her eyes. By the way, if I enter the Yuan sect's ancestral court, what about you, senior sister? Where will you go? Lin Sun asked. Jun Huan blinked her beautiful eyes happily. Little junior brother, why do you care so much about me? Are you reluctant to let me leave you? Lin Sun's lips twitched. What do you think, senior sister? Jun Huan said matter-of-factly. Of course you don't want to leave me. Is there a need to guess? Lin Sun smiled bitterly. What else could he say? In the following period of time, the treasure ship carrying Jun Huan and Lin Sun trekked in the central main region. They were not in a hurry. Occasionally they would pass by some famous places and go sightseeing. The seventh heaven was different from the other heavens. It was extremely vast, and ordinary people might not be able to walk out of this corner of the world in their lifetime. Even cultivators would feel as if they were just a drop in the ocean when trekking in this world. Time passed day by day. Lin Sun and Jun Huan walked on the road like a couple, traveling between mountains and rivers, passing through prosperous places, galloping above the clouds and resting under the sun, moon, and stars. Unknowingly, a year had passed. On this day, Jun Huan, dressed in a pink robe with big sleeves, stood on the bow of the ship, looking ahead, and said, Little junior brother, we will arrive at the shore of the infinite star sea in less than half a month. At this moment, in this situation, what do you want to say to me? She turned around and smiled sweetly. The infinite star sea had been a forbidden area since ancient times, where the Yuan sect's ancestral court was located. In ordinary times, no one could get close to the strange and mysterious sea at all. This time, the grand meeting of the Yuan sect's ancestral court to recruit successors would be held in the infinite star sea. At that time, the infinite star sea would also be open to the world, and people could enter and exit at will. Lin Sun was stunned and said, What do I want to say? Jun Huan corrected him seriously, What do you want to say to me, not what you want to say. Lin Sun had a strange look in his eyes and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you have to say it? Jun Huan snorted coldly. You don't want to say it? Lin Sun immediately restrained his emotions. After thinking for a long time, he said, Senior sister, when I enter the Yuan sect's ancestral court, I will help you see if there is a good man worthy of you. You are such a blockhead. Jun Huan poked Lin Sun's forehead with a finger, feeling angry and amused. Chapter 2777. Infinite Star Sea. The waves were vast and seemingly boundless. A myriad of stars seemed to be embedded in the sky, and they were dazzling, causing this mysterious sea to seem like an eternal pure land. This place was like a forbidden area all year round, and it was covered by the mysterious power of order. It was also because the Origin sect's ancestral court's recruitment event was about to be held that the mysterious veil of this sea was lifted. Whoosh! The treasure ship carried Lin Sun and Jun Huan across the sky. Along the way, dazzling and resplendent divine rays of light could be seen everywhere. Some were riding divine birds, some were riding treasure lights, some were riding auspicious clouds, and some were riding bronze chariots. For a time, divine rays of light shot out like rain, and they formed a bustling and clamorous scene in this mysterious sea. But most of the cultivators had only come because of its reputation, and they were purely here to join in the fun. They didn't have the qualifications to participate in the Origin Sex recruitment event at all. Wow! This is the infinite star sea? Oh my God, look, the myriad of stars in the sky, and the starlight they emit is condensed from the purest and primitive aura of the great Tao. Shoo! Can you lower your voice? Don't let others think we're bumpkins. Along the way, the clamor rose and fell. Most of the cultivators were like Lin Sun and Jun Huan. It was their first time coming to the infinite star sea. When they saw this magical sea, the shock in their hearts could be imagined. Lin Sun and Jun Huan didn't delay and continued forward. After the time for an incense stick to burn, an ancient city that floated above the infinite star sea and was beneath the sky appeared in their field of vision. This city was simply like a floating land that was bathed in the radiance of the myriad stars. The ancient city walls seemed to be made of divine gold, and they were suffused with a sacred and solemn aura. The divine city of absolute despair. The location of the Origin Sex recruitment was located in this majestic, towering, and ancient divine city. It's said that this divine city of absolute despair was built by the founder of the Origin sect himself. Just the types of immortal matter consumed are as many as 10,000, and it's known as the #1 city in the 7th heaven region. Now that I've seen it, it really deserves its reputation. Jun Huan sighed with emotion. She and Lin Sun put away the treasure ship and flashed towards the divine city of absolute despair. He just entered the city gate when he saw a bustling crowd shuttling back and forth on the streets like flowing water, and they rubbed shoulders with each other, causing the city to seem extremely bustling and flourishing. On the other hand, numerous strands of divine radiance floated in the sky. They were resplendent and suffused with blazing light, and they illuminated the entire city. As one stood beneath them, every breath one took was filled with the pure and thick primitive aura of the Grand Tao. Everything here seemed to be a bustling market in the mortal world, but in fact it was a first-class blessed land in the infinite star sea. Even with Lin Sun's experience, he couldn't help being shocked in his heart. The reason was very simple. On one hand, it was because the atmosphere of the divine city of 10,000 absolute was magnificent, far from ordinary. But most importantly, at the instant he walked into the city, he sensed at least 100 obscure and terrifying auras. Each aura had at least the immortal realm. This was only what Lin Sun could sense at the moment. If those undying beings hidden in the shadows were included, the number would probably be even more. This will also be the place where I, Lin Sun, will truly establish myself in the eternal true world. Looking at the bustling streets, feeling the auras of powerful beings in all directions, Lin Sun's eyes were deep and calm, and he quietly clenched his fists. Entering this city is equivalent to entering the territory of the Origin Sect's ancestral court. Even if our identities are exposed, no one will dare to make a move here, Jun Huan said softly. Let's go to the center of the city first. If we want to participate in the selection, we must first obtain a certificate. As he spoke, he led Lin Sun forward. Oh my, that seems to be a legendary golden qilin. Its entire body seems to be made of gold, and it shines with divine light. Its aura is truly terrifying. According to legend, the golden qilin is the guardian beast of the Dongwang clan in the 8th heaven region. I didn't expect to see it here, in the void. A qilin that emitted boundless golden light flew past. Its body was like a mountain, and its fur was soft and smooth. It sprinkled magnificent golden divine light, causing an uproar. The Dongwang clan. Lin Sun looked over and saw a group of people on the back of the golden qilin. They were clearly the powerful beings of the Dongwang clan. All of a sudden, a terrifying fluctuation came from the sky. An incomparably handsome immortal bird with bright-colored wings glided across the sky. It was also carrying a group of people. Vermilion bird. Oh my God, this is a pure-blooded vermilion bird, an innate god of fire. That's the guardian beast of the Chi clan. In the city, all sorts of exclamations rang out. Roar. Not long after, a thunderous roar shook the sky. Not long after the vermilion bird left, a pure white divine beast with 4 ink-black hooves, a lion's head and a dragon's beard appeared in the sky. Its entire body radiated a myriad of auspicious lights. Is this a Pishio? It must be. This is the guardian beast of the Zhongli clan. Another uproar broke out on the street. The Pishio was an innate auspicious beast, an auspicious omen. It was an existence that could suppress the luck of a clan. Now, it had actually become a mount, flying over with a group of people on it. Lin Sun's gaze was calm as he watched this scene. Before he came to the infinite star sea, he already knew that the 4 immortal giants, the Dongwang clan, the Qi clan, the Zhongli clan, and the Mu clan, would participate in the selection of the Yuan sect's successor. As they moved forward, more and more immortal birds and divine beasts appeared. All of them were extremely terrifying. Some of them were so powerful that just their aura alone could make people's hearts tremble. Compared to those immortal birds, Lin Sun and Jun Huan were extremely inconspicuous. They didn't even have immortal beasts to ride on. However, the two of them didn't care about that at all. 10 minutes later, an extremely unique sword-shaped building appeared in the center of the city. From afar, this building looked like a divine sword that pierced through the clouds. The buildings at the bottom stood side by side, like a broad sword hilt. Above it, layers of buildings rose up, just like the body of the sword. 10,000 Extinction Sword Palace. All those who participated in the selection had to register at the 10,000 Extinction Sword Palace and obtain a certificate. At this moment, in front of the 10,000 Extinction Sword Palace, although the huge dojo was empty, the dojo was already filled with figures. The golden qilin of the Dongwang clan, the vermilion bird of the Qi clan, the Pishio of the Zhongli clan, and other divine beasts were all among them. Taking a glance, with the dojo in front of the 10,000 Extinction Sword Palace as the center, those who occupied the best positions in the surrounding area were all famous undying forces. Leaving aside the 4 immortal giants of the 8th heaven, there were also the 4 eastern royal clans, Dugu clan, Zhou clan, Lu Xiang clan, and other top forces of the 12 heavens, as well as undying forces from the 36 blessed lands like the Zhuang clan. Every force had an undying existence. Just the aura they emitted was enough to suppress other cultivators, preventing them from approaching. When Lin Sun and Jun Huan's figures arrived, an old voice rang out in the field. The successor of Fang Xiyuan, who used to hide like a mouse, actually has the guts to appear in the 10,000 Extinction Divine City. This is really beyond my expectations. This voice wasn't loud, but it resounded clearly in the field, suppressing all the chatter. The entire central area of the city fell silent. After that, people saw that the person who spoke was a tall old man with hair as white as snow. He stood beside the divine beast of the Dongwang clan, the Golden Qilin, Eastern Royal Dome, an old peak-stage nirvana god of the Dongwang clan. Following his gaze, people saw Lin Sun and Jun Huan. Lin Sun, this extremely audacious murderer, actually came. The field was in an uproar. Countless people were shocked and had looks of disbelief on their faces. Even the undying emperor clans were shocked, their eyes flashing. If it was any other Emperor Zhu Xian, he wouldn't have attracted too much attention. Because right now, in the vicinity of the 10,000 Extinction Sword Palace, there were groups of Emperor Zhu Xian and undying existences everywhere. Who would pay attention to a single Emperor Zhu Xian? But Lin Sun was different. The young man was like an undying legend. He had started making a name for himself in the great Thousand Battles realm, and up to that moment, He had slaughtered his way to the seventh heaven. He had miraculously survived time and time again, causing the eternal true world to be shaken countless times. And 3 years ago, when the news of Lin soon appearing in the seventh heaven and participating in the selection of the Yuan sect spread, he attracted even more attention. But no one expected that the successor of Fang Siyuan would really dare to come. For a moment, the field was in an uproar. Almost all eyes fell on Lin Sun and Jun Huan. Who is that beside him? Instant Dao, Sword Dao is the most outstanding. Besides Fang Siyuan's successor, Jun Huan, who else could it be? At the same time, Jun Huan's identity was also seen through by the major forces, causing quite a commotion. They suddenly became the focus of attention, but Lin Sun and Jun Huan seemed very calm. All of this was within their expectations. In fact, from the moment they left Frost Moon City until they arrived at the divine city of absolute eternity, the two of them didn't hide their identities at all. They didn't even disguise or change their appearances. There was no other reason. There was no need. After all, they were going to participate in the selection of the Yuan sect's successors, and their identities were destined to be exposed. Since that was the case, why would they need to cover up? Little junior brother, look at that old thing. His name is Dongwang Qiong. He's at the peak of the Nirvana God realm. Their ancestor's head was once smashed by our master. Jun Huan glanced at Dongwang Qiong, his voice melodious, resounding through the entire field. Now he's shamelessly calling us rats. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Lin Sun laughed. Ridiculous. Dongwang Qiong frowned, his expression turning gloomy. Everyone in the surroundings glanced at each other, and they were extremely shocked in their hearts. Dongwang Qiong represented the Dongwang clan of the eighth heaven. He was one of the most respected figures in the divine palace of absolute eternity. But now, not only was Dongwang Qiong being mocked, even the Dongwang clan behind him was being mocked. The master of Fang Siyuan is dead, and your successor is like a remnant of the world. If not for the fact that you've been hiding all these years, how could you have survived until now? Suddenly, another voice rang out. It was cold, ethereal, and filled with great majesty. Next to the vermilion bird, a beautiful woman in black with white hair tied up in a bun spoke. P.S. Continue to update tonight. Chapter 2778. Qi Tingzi, a Nirvana god from the Qi clan. Dressed in black, her hair was white like snow. She looked like a beautiful young woman, but in reality, she was an antique that had cultivated for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. As she spoke, she attracted the attention of many people present. Jun Huan raised his brow. Just as he was about to speak, Lin Sun took out the abyssal sword cauldron and lightly knocked on the cauldron. Lin Sun, kill me if you have the guts. Why do you have to suppress me until now and humiliate me with such despicable methods? It was a cold female voice filled with hatred. It came from the abyssal sword cauldron and resounded throughout the area. In an instant, the expressions of Qi Tingzi and the Qi clan members changed. It's Ling Yun. Someone exclaimed. Yes, it's Qi Ling Yun. Back in the God realm, she became my prey and I couldn't bear to kill her, Lin Sun said slowly. Everyone became more and more restless. They didn't expect Lin Sun to be so domineering. He actually held the daughter of the Qi clan leader, Qi Lingyun. At this moment, Qi Tingzi's expression was extremely unsightly while killing intent surged into his eyes. He said, "Let Lingyun go, and I guarantee that my Qi clan will let you go during the recruitment event of the Origin Sect's ancestral court." His voice paused with every word, like a piercingly cold blade. Everyone felt a stabbing pain in their hearts, and their expressions couldn't help but change slightly. Wishful thinking. Lin Sun casually tossed Qi Lingyun, who was suppressed in the abyssal sword cauldron, into Jun Huan's hand. "Senior sister, I'll leave her to you. If you're unhappy, take it out on this girl." Jun Huan grinned. "Little junior brother loves me the most. Yu Qi Tingzi and the other Qi clan members were livid. If they weren't in front of the Sword Palace, they would have already attacked. Fellow Taoists, don't be angry over this. In the City of Despair, no one dares to kill. No matter how arrogant these two are, they won't dare to kill Lady Qi Lingyun. In the distance, an undying from the Zhongli clan said indifferently next to the Pishio. This was a green-robed youth at the Nirvana realm. His hands were behind his back as he stood on a cloud. His eyes were filled with majesty. Zhongli Chong, an old monster that had reached the Nirvana god realm countless years ago. His voice was indifferent. It's very simple to save Miss Qi Lingyun. When the ancestral court of Yuan religion recruits disciples, Lin Sun will definitely be defeated. After he and Jun Huan leave the city of absolute gods, we'll attack together and suppress them. His voice shook the whole audience, directly predicting the outcome of Lin's defeat. His tone was calm, but his attitude was undoubtedly tougher and more frightening. Qi Tingzi said, "All right. Sigh, I suddenly feel a little unhappy." Jun Huan raised his hand and slapped Qi Lingyun's face. Qi Lingyun's fair cheek immediately turned red and swollen. The crisp sound of the slap resounded throughout the square and was clearly heard by everyone. This scene caused Zhongli Chong to be unable to help but frown. "Jun Huan, you're courting death." Qi Tingzi was so furious that she almost crushed her teeth from clenching them. Jun Huan chuckled and said, "To put it bluntly, if I were to fight you one-on-one, I would take your life within 3 moves. Unfortunately, I can't make a move here, so I can only vent my anger on this little prey." Slap. As soon as his voice fell, Jun Huan slapped Qi Lingyun's face again. Qi Lingyun was about to go crazy after being humiliated and trampled on in front of everyone. She screamed with all her might, but she couldn't make a single sound. It was obvious that Jun Huan had sealed her. "Is your Fangtsuan mountain so shameless? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the world?" On the side of the Mu clan, a burly man with hair like a halberd said in a deep voice. His voice resounded like thunder, causing everyone's eardrums to buzz and stars to appear in front of their eyes. "Mu Tsangjia, the old monster of the Mu clan at the Nirvana realm. You're all immortal giants of the 8th heaven, but you joined forces to threaten me and my junior brother. Don't you feel shameless?" Jun Huan said indifferently, "There's no need to say any more nonsense. Everyone knows what's going to happen next. Let's see what happens in the disciple recruitment test. At that time, I'd like to see if your combined strength is able to stop my junior brother's slaughter." These words were simply a declaration of war to all the forces present who were hostile to Fangtsuan Mountain. Incomparably domineering. Gathered in the field were the top forces from the 7th and 8th heaven, as well as many cultivators from all over the world. At this moment, they couldn't help but be shocked by Jun Huan's words. Yes, as early as 3 years ago, everyone knew that as long as Lin Sun dared to appear in the selection of the ancestral court of Yuan religion, he was destined to be killed. The scenes that were playing out right now were undoubtedly proving this point. However, no one expected that Jun Huan would directly declare war at this moment. What kind of courage and confidence did he have to dare to say such words? Good. This seat wants to see exactly who wins and who loses in this contest. In the distance, Dong Wangqiong's voice was cold. So many years have passed, but Fangtsuan Mountain still can't change its insufferably arrogant way of doing things. In that case, I'll take this opportunity to let the whole world see how the two of you will die. Qi Tingzi's voice was cold, and she didn't hide her killing intent. Others like Zhongli Chong and Mu Tsangjia also looked cold, looking at Lin Sun and Jun Huan as if they were about to die. This scene made the hearts of the people in the field tremble again. The 4 immortal giants of the 8th heaven had already revealed their undisguised killing intent. In addition, forces such as the 4 eastern royal families and the Zhuang clan who were hostile to Fangtsuan Mountain would certainly not stand idly by. Under such circumstances, How could Lin Sun hope to enter the ancestral court of Yuan religion? However, Jun Huan patted Lin Sun's shoulder gently and said, "Junior brother, go to the Wanjua Sword Palace to register first." Lin Sun walked straight to the empty Taoist field, and walked towards the Wanjua Sword Palace at the end of the Taoist field. His tall figure also became the focus of the audience. Every single one of them had a different expression. There was regret, there was joy in his misfortune, there was pity, and there was undisguised killing intent in this regard. Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy, as if he was unaware of it. Until he arrived at the Wanjua Sword Palace. In the spacious hall, there were only 4 figures standing there. The leader was dressed in a wide-sleeved linen robe. He was tall, and his gray hair was coiled into a bun. He looked thin, and his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. His aura was tranquil and tranquil. When he saw Lin Sun walk in, he opened his mouth and said with a voice like the morning bell and evening drum, "I'm Fang Daoping, the deputy head of Yuanqing Pavilion. I will be in charge of this assessment. Junior Lin Sun greets Senior." Lin Sun cupped his fists and saluted. He had long known that Fang Daoping was indifferent and had a high prestige in Yuanqing Pavilion. Fang Daoping nodded and said, "To participate in the assessment of Yuan religion, no matter who you are, you must follow the rules of Yuan religion. Do you understand?" Lin Sun said solemnly, "Understood." Fang Daoping pointed to the 3 people beside him and said, "These 3 are Elder Dong Wangqing, Elder Xiao Wenyuan, and Elder Li Zhen. There are 3 tests in this assessment, and they will each be responsible for 1 test. Greetings, seniors." Lin Sun cupped his hands. As he spoke, he saw the appearance of the 3 clearly. Xiao Wenyuan looked like a young man. He wore a blue robe and a square scarf on his head. He held a snow-white rui scepter in his hand and smiled. He had a refined temperament like a teacher. He nodded slightly to Lin Sun and said with a smile, "I've heard of your reputation." Li Zhen had thick bones and bronze skin. His hair and beard were messy, and his whole body was filled with iron-blooded killing intent. Facing Lin Sun's salute, he said in a deep voice, "Remember the words of Deputy Head Fang. In Yuan religion, no matter who you are, you must follow the rules." Dong Wangqing wore a purple robe. His eyes were sunken, his cheeks were long and narrow, and his eyes were cold and frightening. He looked at Lin Sun and said with a fake smile, "Lin Sun, Lin Daoyuan. I've heard of this name more than once. Now I finally meet you in person." He didn't show any hostility and looked normal. Lin Sun looked calm and didn't show any emotion. He wasn't stupid enough to provoke Dong Wangqing, who had great power. "Lin Sun, imprint a trace of your willpower into this nameplate and put it away. This will be the proof of your participation in the selection test." Fang Daoping took out a nameplate and handed it to Lin Sun. Lin Sun did as he was told. "Come with me," Xiao Wenyuan said with a smile. Before coming here, Lin Sun had already learned that the selection test was divided into 3 rounds. For the first round of assessment, one would enter a secret realm called the Battlefield of Infinite Despair. At that time, all the Juetian great ancestors who participated in the test would compete in the Battlefield of Despair. As long as they defeated 3 opponents, they could pass the test. The chief examiner of the first round was Xiao Wenyuan. Immediately, Lin Sun followed Xiao Wenyuan to the highest point of the Sword Palace, where the Sword Point was located. There was a cloud platform here, and it floated amidst the clouds. Standing there, one would be able to see a myriad of stars spread out beneath the sky, and it was a rather magnificent sight. On one side of the cloud platform, there was a whirlpool door. Take this jade slip. Once the assessment begins, the jade slip will display the information of all the experts participating in this assessment. Xiao Wenyuan passed a golden jade slip to Lin Sun, then pointed at the whirlpool door and said, "If you enter from here, you will arrive at the Battlefield of Despair. The first assessment will begin in 2 days, and the time limit is 1 month. If you fail to meet the requirements of the assessment within this time, you will be eliminated as well. Lin Sun nodded. Thank you for your guidance. Xiao Wenyuan smiled and waved. Go, familiarize yourself with the situation in the battlefield of despair. Lin Sun walked towards the whirlpool passage on one side of the cloud platform. As the space rippled, his figure disappeared. Lin Sun, do you know that your arrival has already caused a lot of trouble in the ancestral court of the Yuan sect? If you are eliminated in the 3 rounds of the selection test, there won't be a good show to watch. Xiao Wenyuan murmured to himself. Although I don't see much chance of winning, I do hope for a miracle. Then, he shook his head with a smile and turned to leave. P.S. Send more updates to me. Chapter 2779. 10,000 Extinction Sword Palace. Seeing Xiao Wenyuan return, Dong Wangqing smiled and asked, What do you think of Lin Sun after meeting him? Xiao Wenyuan was startled. What do you think of him? Dong Wangqing laughed. I'm a member of the Dongwang clan after all. I naturally don't have any good comments about the successor of Fangxuan. This isn't a good time to say anything either. Xiao Wenyuan couldn't help but laugh. Brother Dongwang is honest and straightforward. In my opinion, Lin Sun is a very interesting young man. What do you mean? Dong Wangqing raised his brows. Xiao Wenyuan casually said, During these years, this young man has made enemies with many undying forces. But unexpectedly, he's still living well. Isn't this interesting? Dong Wangqing was silent for a moment before saying, In that case, Brother Xiao thinks that this young man can pass the selection test? Xiao Wenyuan shook his head. I didn't say that. Everyone knows that once the test starts, Lin Sun will definitely become the target of everyone. Under such circumstances, I don't dare to say anything. Dong Wangqing laughed and said, This is within reason. Everyone in the world knows that minuscule mountain is practically the public enemy of the world. Who knows how many forces wish to uproot it? Now, this Lin Sun has appeared openly and wants to join our origin religion's ancestral court. He is clearly using the origin religion's ancestral court as a refuge. After a pause, coldness flashed in his eyes. Perhaps this young man thinks that as long as he becomes the successor of the origin sect, he will be free of worries and no one will dare to harm him. Xiao Wenyuan frowned. Li Zhen, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. If this young man really becomes the successor of the origin sect, will there still be people who dare to harm him? His bones were thick and his skin was bronze in color. His hair was messy and his eyes were like cold lightning. Once he spoke, he gave off a strong sense of oppression. Dong Wangqing's smile faded and he said indifferently, That depends on whether he has the chance to become the successor of the origin sect. Li Zhen stared at Dong Wangqing and said, You didn't answer my question directly. As if he was interrogating him, the atmosphere became more oppressive. Dong Wangqing looked straight at Li Zhen and said, Because this question is meaningless. Because Lin Sun has no chance to pass the selection test. It was resolute and decisive. Li Zhen stared at Dong Wangqing for a moment before she said, If you dare to go against the rules and do something shameful, I won't forgive you. Dong Wangqing's face sank as he said, Li Zhen, what do you mean by this? All right, there's no need for you to argue about this. Fang Daoping, who had been indifferent like an outsider, frowned and said, My request for this selection is very simple. Do things according to the rules. This is also my personal attitude. Li Zhen remained silent. Dong Wangqing nodded and said, Deputy Pavilion Master Fang, don't worry. I won't tolerate anything that violates the rules. Xiao Wenyuan looked at Li Zhen, then at Dong Wangqing. He played with the jade scepter in his hand and smiled without saying a word. Before the assessment began, the two chief examiners confronted each other. Lin Sun's arrival had really set off an unexpected storm, however. What was Deputy Pavilion Leader Fang's attitude? Xiao Wenyuan couldn't figure it out, but he felt that it was getting more and more interesting. Treacherous waves surged, undercurrents surged. Battlefield of despair. Under the dark blue sky, mountains and rivers rose and fell, vast and boundless. Lin's figure appeared in a canyon. As he appeared, a formless power of rules pressed down on him, restricting his cultivation. However, it did not affect his ability to walk. Before the assessment began, his cultivation would be imprisoned in this way. Lin soon glanced around and sat down with his legs crossed after a while. In his mind, he recalled all kinds of information about the first assessment. In the assessment, it was forbidden to use the power of rules. It was forbidden to use the forbidden secret treasures and external forces beyond the scope of Ancestor Realm. The nameplate would be the last line to save one's life. If one was killed, one could stay alive. The assessment would last for a month. If one defeated 3 opponents within the time limit, he could enter the second assessment. Among these rules, the only thing that made Lin Sun frown was that after killing the opponents, they wouldn't really die. Instead, their lives would be preserved by the nameplate. Although he was a little reluctant, he still figured out a strategy. If he met an enemy, he would attack his body and break his heart. The higher the realm of cultivation, the more dangerous the disaster would be once there was a problem with the state of mind. For example, Marshal Uncle Kong Ju was crazy and muddle-headed because of the problem with his state of mind. He was in a miserable situation. Like Yen Ji, the pavilion master of Void Pavilion, it was said that because of the problem with his state of mind, he cultivated himself to the point that only his spirit was left. Lin Sun was sure that as long as the opponent's state of mind was broken, he would be a waste if he survived. Even if he could recover and preserve his cultivation, he would never set foot on the path of immortality in this life. However, it was extremely difficult to do this. After all, anyone who could set foot in the Ancestor Realm had a state of mind that was extremely tough and powerful, far beyond ordinary people. For such a person, any means of torture, humiliation, and provocation are doomed to be useless. If I want to break his state of mind, I should give the most fatal blow to his self-confidence and let him live in my own shadow for the rest of his life. In this way, his state of mind will be broken by itself. Lin Sun had made up his mind. Then, he stood up and began to walk around the valley to check it out. Although his cultivation was imprisoned, it didn't affect his cognition and perception of everything in the world. 2 days passed quickly. In front of the Wanjua Sword Palace, on the huge Taoist field, buzz. A strange fluctuation rolled, and a strange world picture emerged, in which there were vast mountains and rivers, vast and magnificent. It was the battlefield of despair. During this period of time, all the cultivators that had been waiting in the vicinity since a long time ago had stopped talking at this moment, and they'd simultaneously shot their gazes towards the world within the battlefield of despair that had just appeared. The first assessment is about to begin. People who had been looking forward to it for a long time couldn't help but be slightly excited at this moment. After many years, the ancestral court of Yuan sect once again openly recruited descendants. Such an opportunity could only be encountered by chance, and it attracted the attention of all the major forces in the heavens. For example, in this grand event, even the descendants of the 4 major forces of the 8th heaven participated. It was an unprecedented event. And now, the first test was about to begin. How many great ancestor Ju Ing Emperor Ancestor would be able to pass? In the quiet and solemn atmosphere, Fang Daoping, the deputy pavilion master of Yuanqing Pavilion, led 3 elders, Dong Wangqing, Xiao Wenyuan, and Li Zhen, to appear in front of the Wanjua Sword Palace. All of a sudden, they attracted the attention of the audience. Fang Daoping clasped his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "There are a total of 109 Emperor ancestors participating in the selection of our Yuan sect's descendants. When the assessment begins, everyone present can watch the battle scene that takes place in the battlefield of despair." In other words, everyone is also a witness of this assessment. My attitude is very simple. No matter who it is, no matter what their origin or background, if they cheat or violate the rules of the assessment, they will be expelled immediately. His words were like the morning bell and evening drum, resounding throughout the audience, making everyone's heart tremble. Act according to the rules. This was Fong Daoping's attitude, the attitude of the Yuanqing Pavilion, and the attitude of the Yuan sect's ancestral court. As his voice fell, Fong Daoping nodded at Xiao Wenyuan. Xiao Wenyuan immediately stepped forward and gently threw the jade scepter in his hand. Floating high up in the sky, the world of the 10,000 despair that was unfurled like a painting, ripples started to surface at this moment. Immediately after, the figures of 109 emperor ancestors participating in the assessment appeared in the battlefield of despair, scattered in different parts of the world like messy chess pieces. All of a sudden, there was a commotion in the audience, and voices of discussion rose from all directions. Look, that's Donghuang Shaoan, the most tyrannical emperor ancestor of this generation of the Donghuang clan. He's known as the Qilin of the Eighth Heaven and has a terrifying forbidden ability. It's said that he once crossed a realm and killed an immortal. That person is Qi Qingshi. Ever since she stepped into the ancestor realm, she has never been defeated in 10,000 battles. She's an extremely stunning fairy in the Eighth Heaven. Did you see that? That's Mu Zunwu, the only one above the Great Tao. An invincible and terrifying existence. All kinds of discussions resounded, and the audience was also in heated discussion. Each of the 109 emperor ancestors participating in the assessment this time can be said to be a heaven-defying existence in the same realm, each with their own monstrous power and prestige. In the past, they would be the most glorious existences in the major heavens, like the sun in the sky, shining alone. But now, they are all gathered in the battlefield of despair, about to stage a peerless competition. How can people not be excited and look forward to it? On the Emperor's Road, the ancestor realm is invincible. Now, a group of emperor ancestors have gathered and are about to compete and discuss the Tao. Such a grand occasion is rarely seen in thousands of years. Some old antiques sighed and sighed with emotion. Lin Sun's figure also attracted a lot of attention, even far more than the other examinees. Because everyone knows that when the assessment begins, Lin Sun is destined to become a target, and will be killed by those enemies. The assessment begins. Xiao Wenyuan shouted, his voice resounding through the whole audience. Almost at the same time, the experts scattered in different areas of the battlefield of despair all noticed that their cultivation base that had been imprisoned was restored at this moment. This means that the assessment has begun. In the valley, Lin Sun abruptly opened his eyes from meditation. He stood up and glanced around, his moon-white robe fluttering in the wind. A surging murderous intent surged from his heart. He did not conceal himself, nor did he conceal any aura on his body. With his hands behind his back, he stepped out of the valley. Upright and aboveboard. In the past years, he had been hunted by many hostile forces and was slandered as a remnant. No matter where he went, he had to hide his traces, suppress his murderous intent, and keep a low profile. Even in front of the Sword Palace of Despair, he and senior sister Jun Huan were repeatedly provoked and ridiculed by those hostile forces. But from now on, in the territory of the Yuan sect's ancestral court, in the battlefield of despair, he would no longer hide his strength like before. Chapter 2780. Under the sky, Lin Sun strode forward. His expression was neither sad nor happy, and his figure was completely exposed. This scene quickly attracted the attention of the spectators. Many were surprised. What is he trying to do? Does he not know that once his tracks are exposed, he'll attract a lot of trouble? The test had begun. In the battlefield of despair, a group of Zhu Xie great ancestors were on the move, but not in the same way as Lin Sun. Some concealed their auras and searched for the best hiding place to wait for their prey. Some were setting up restrictive formations. Some were using secret arts to contact their companions, intending to work together. Dong Wang Shaoan, Qi Qingshi, Mu Zunwu, and the other Zhu Xie great ancestors were all using secret arts to call for companions. With their status, they could easily gather a group of Zhu Xie great ancestors to serve them. This was not a violation of the rules. In fact, before the test had even begun, these participants had already formed small camps in private. Only Lin Sun took action directly after the assessment began. He walked between heaven and earth like an unsheathed sword and started to take action. This was undoubtedly very unusual. This kid is as daring as the rumors say. Dong Wang Qiong sneered next to the golden Qilin. Everyone knew who the kid he was referring to was. If the heavens want him dead, they will make him mad. Qi Tingzi said expressionlessly. There have been many rumors in the world saying that the little rascal's battle prowess is heaven-defying and that his methods are extraordinary. But now it seems that those rumors are too exaggerated. Mu Songjia said slowly. If he acts like this, he won't even need a month. He'll be eliminated in 3 days. 3 days? No, he'll be eliminated in less than a day, Zhongli Chong said indifferently. Zhongli Chong spoke indifferently. Look at the battlefield of despair. There are opponents in every direction of that kid. The closest ones are only 5,000 kilometers away, and the farther ones are only a few tens of thousands of km away. He hasn't concealed his aura at all, so it won't be long before a conflict will occur. He paused, then continued. As long as there's a conflict, no matter who wins or loses, it will attract the attention of others. When that happens, who can resist taking advantage of the situation? Everyone nodded. Zhongli Chang's analysis was precisely the opinion that they agreed with. Finally, Zhongli Chong concluded, in my opinion, Lin Sun's behavior at this time is stupid. The word stupid resounded throughout the entire arena. There was no concealment of mockery and contempt. Jun Huan didn't say anything. Facts spoke louder than words, and there was no point in talking nonsense. When Lin Sun won, it would be the best counterattack to these sarcastic remarks. However, there was someone who would not let Jun Huan off. Dong Wang Qiong's voice boomed like thunder. Jun Huan, why don't you speak up for your junior brother? Could it be that you didn't expect your junior brother to be so stupid? Jun Huan raised her slender eyebrows and said indifferently, why don't we make a bet? If my junior brother is eliminated, I'll slap myself in front of everyone and say that I'm a disgrace. If my junior brother passes the assessment, you'll slap yourself and say that you're as blind as a bat. What do you say? Everyone was dumbfounded. That was more ruthless. Even Fang Daoping, Xiao Wenyuan, and other examiners were surprised. Dong Wang Qiong was also stunned, and then he snorted coldly, childish. How can such an assessment be a joke? Even if I win, it won't be glorious. Shut up if you don't dare to bet. Jun Huan said casually, you can say the same to everyone here. I'll play with whoever dares to bet. If you don't talk nonsense. Many people's faces darkened. Qi Tingzi, Zhongli Chong, and Mu Songjia all looked gloomy. Jun Huan's words were undoubtedly the biggest provocation to them. The successor of Fang Siyuan is really arrogant. Dong Wang Qing shook his head and sneered. Fang Daoping looked indifferent, Xiao Wenyuan smiled silently, and Li Zhen was silent as usual. No one spoke, which made Dong Wang Qing feel a little embarrassed. But he soon recovered and thought to himself, I'd like to see how you'll feel after Lin Sun is eliminated. He bumped into him. There was a burst of exclamation. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn to Lin Sun's location in the battlefield of despair. It was a vast plain with lush vegetation. When Lin Sun's figure appeared, a slender black-haired man with a pair of bronze halberds on his back appeared in front of him. Gu Luhai. Almost immediately, everyone recognized the man's identity. Gu Luhai was one of the great ancestors of the Gu clan, one of the 4 eastern royal clans. He had a fierce temperament and was known as one of the top 10 great ancestors of the 7th heaven. His ranking was solid enough to rank in the top 5. This was definitely an extremely powerful existence whose prestige was like the sun in the midday sky. He was renowned for a long time. The crowd was restless, and everyone couldn't help but hold their breath. It had only been half an hour since the assessment started, and Lin Sun and Gu Luhai had already met. What kind of battle would happen between the two? At this moment, many people were worried about Lin Sun. Battlefield of despair. Looking at his first opponent in the distance, information about him appeared in Lin Sun's mind. All the strong participants in the assessment had a golden jade slip, which recorded all the information of their competitors. Lin Sun. In the distance, Gu Luhai's eyes flashed, and his fighting spirit soared into the sky. Ancestor realm laws intertwined all over his body, turning into layers of black lightning, like countless pythons entangled together. Boom! The nearby void collapsed, the vegetation on the ground turned to ash, and the sky and earth changed color. Witnessing this scene, the spectators outside were all amazed. As one of the top 10 great ancestors of the 7th heaven, the power released by him was extraordinary. Making such a big movement as soon as you meet, are you hoping to attract people? Lin Sun put his hands behind his back. His eyes were deep, and he said indifferently. Gu Luhai's eyes were as sharp as swords. He pulled out the pair of bronze maces behind his back and said, "There are many people who want to kill you. I don't want to fight you to the end at the beginning of the assessment." "So, you plan to attract others to come and use their power to eliminate me?" Lin Sun asked. Gu Luhai nodded, "Yes." "Do you think you can live until others come?" Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy. Gu Luhai couldn't help but laugh. "Lin Sun, you are too arrogant. You just want to delay for a while. Do you think I can't do it?" "You can't do it." With an understatement, Lin's figure disappeared from Air's sight. Gu Luhai's pupils narrowed slightly. Clang! The pair of bronze maces in his hands crisscrossed, making a thunderous sound of destruction and killing, and slashed out fiercely. At that moment, it was like a pair of violent thunder dragons coming from the 9th heaven, wreaking havoc on the world. The unparalleled destructive aura spread, darkening the sky and collapsing the mountains and rivers. As soon as he attacked, Gu Luhai revealed the unimaginable killing means of a top emperor ancestor, which was far from comparable to ordinary emperor ancestors. That kind of divine power made many immortal figures secretly nod, feeling that the new generation was better than the old generation. Boom! In the chaos of the void, Lin Sun's figure appeared, only 10 feet away from Gu Luhai. And the terrible thunder wrapped in the bronze maces was smashing towards his figure. Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the light surged up like an abyss, directly shattering the thunder all over the sky, and even the pair of bronze maces buzzed violently. Gu Luhai's pupils shrank. He didn't underestimate Lin Sun in his heart. Over the years, he had carefully studied Lin Sun's battle achievements, and he was very clear that Lin Sun was not easy to deal with. Otherwise, he wouldn't have adopted such a strategy. He just wanted to stall Lin Sun, wait for the others to come, and then kill Lin Sun together. But he still didn't expect that the combat strength Lin Sun displayed would be so terrifying, and even much stronger than the rumors said. This made Gu Luhai immediately realize that the situation was not good, and he didn't dare to hesitate any longer. Boom! Suddenly, a black lightning Tao diagram appeared on his body. The Tao diagram was filled with apocalyptic scenes of the apocalypse. Innate magical power. Lightning diagram of annihilation. This was Gu Luhai's strongest means, and it was the extreme embodiment of his cultivation. The battle has just begun, and Gu Luhai has already used his strongest magical power. The spectators were all moved at this moment. How could they not see that Gu Luhai had obviously realized that the situation was not good, and that was why he was forced to use his trump card. And it also showed how terrifying Lin Sun's offensive means were. Go! In the roar, Gu Luhai was surrounded by the breath of the lightning diagram of annihilation. Doomsday thunderbolts as thick as pythons rolled and emerged, roaring and rushing towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent, without any ripples, and there was no emotion on his face. Only his right hand suddenly stretched out and grasped in the air. Boom! A huge palm appeared, and the 5 vigorous fingers were like pillars supporting the sky, surrounded by terrifying devouring waves. The palm was like a bottomless abyss, with the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the phenomena in the world annihilated in it. Big hand covering the sky. Then, countless black doomsday thunderbolts were suddenly firmly grasped and stopped in the void. As Lin Sun's huge palm clenched, boom! The earth-shattering explosion sounded, and the black thunderbolts exploded inch by inch, turning into rolling debris and light rain. This shocking scene caused a burst of exclamation in the outside world, and all of them trembled in their hearts. This was too strong. Open! Gu Luhai shouted, and the lightning diagram of annihilation, which had been accumulating power for a long time, rose in the rumbling roar, like a peerless thunder tribulation coming to the world. In all directions, the clouds collapsed in all directions. The terrible vision of annihilation made the world lose its color. But Lin Sun didn't even look at it, and the huge hand he stretched out suddenly slapped down. Bang! The lightning diagram of annihilation, regarded as the most powerful talent by Gu Luhai, suddenly shook violently, and then burst into pieces with dense cracking sounds. Gu Luhai's eyeballs almost fell out, and his face changed completely. His strongest trump card had been smashed by a single slap? This was like a heavy hammer, hitting his heart so hard that he showed signs of losing control of his state of mind. At this time, the sky-covering hand slapped down again. Looking from a distance, it was like the sky was falling, covering the sky and the sun. At this moment, Gu Luhai only felt like a small ant, desperate and helpless. This guy, how could he be so strong? Boom! Boundless pain spread all over Gu Luhai's body. He could hear the sound of his bones breaking and blood splashing. His soul was like being smashed by a peerless hammer, making him let out a dull cry of pain. At that moment, Gu Luhai thought he was going to die. In the eyes of the people outside, under Lin Sun's palm, Gu Luhai was directly smashed into the ground. His body was badly mutilated, and his figure was broken. The nearby ground collapsed into a huge gully, shaped like a palm print. This brutal and domineering scene made the immortals slightly dazed. A peerless figure ranked among the top 10 supreme emperors of the 7th heaven was suppressed by a slap? This was too terrifying. The area around the Taoist sanctum was silent. Dong Wang Qiong, Qi Tingzi, and others also frowned. Of course, Gu Luhai was not an ordinary person, but he was suppressed like this. The combat power shown by Lin Sun was beyond their expectations. In this regard, Jun Huan just smiled and said calmly, "This battle was supposed to be like this. In the smoke and dust." Gu Luhai, whose body was broken and stained with blood, suddenly found that he was not dead, nor was he eliminated. He couldn't help but be surprised by this. At this moment, Lin Sun's indifferent voice sounded. "I said before, you can't hold me back. It's a pity that your strength is too weak and your status is not enough. The 3 places in my hands can't be given to you." Gu Luhai was stunned. What did he mean? He was not qualified for Lin Sun to kick him out? An indescribable shame, like a knife, stabbed into Gu Luhai's heart. His vision turned black and the world was spinning. P.S. 3,500 words. Well, I didn't update today, I have something to do. Chapter 2781. Lin Sun's words couldn't be heard in the outside world. But everyone could see that he didn't eliminate Gu Luhai, who was powerless to fight back. It was naturally impossible for him to feel guilty. After all, this was the recruitment test of the Origin Sect's ancestral court, and it was extremely important. In the first round of the test, only by defeating 3 opponents would one be able to pass. It was probably impossible for any imperial ancestor to miss such an opportunity to eliminate an opponent. But Lin Sun didn't do that. This caused the spectators in the outside world to fall silent. Could it be that Lin Sun disdains to do that? Or does he have another target? Someone couldn't help but speak. The atmosphere was oppressive once more. Many cultivators glanced at each other, and they'd more or less guessed Lin Sun's intentions. However, the answer caused them to be shocked, and they didn't dare to make rash conclusions. If it's really like that, then Lin Sun is too arrogant. Others take this to be a test, yet he takes it to be a chance to defeat his opponent. He's simply... Someone muttered with shock. The silent atmosphere in the surroundings started to become restless, and countless people were astounded by this. On the other hand, powers like the Dongwang clan, Zhongli clan, Qi clan, and Mu clan that hated Lin Sun had gloomy expressions on their faces at this moment. How arrogant was Fang Xiuwen's successor? Even though they felt uncomfortable in their hearts, along with Gu Liuhai's defeat, they'd realized that Lin Sun was a tough fellow, and it would probably not be easy to eliminate him. Fortunately, this was merely the first round of the test, and there was still a long time left. Even if something had happened now, it wasn't to the extent of causing them to lose their composure. Lin Sun didn't eliminate Gu Liuhai, but he didn't let him off just like that. In next to no time, all the treasures in Gu Liuhai's possession had been completely plundered by Lin Sun, and then Gu Liuhai was suppressed into the abyssal sword cauldron. After that, Lin Sun swaggered off. Everyone was dumbstruck when they saw this scene. This was the test of the Origin Sect's ancestral court, yet it could be done like this? Everyone instinctively looked at Xiao Wenyuan, who stood before the Myriad Despair Sword Palace. Xiao Wenyuan was the main examiner for the first round of the assessment. Seeing this, a strange look appeared in his eyes. After a while, he coughed dryly and said with a smile, "Yes, the test's rules don't prohibit this. However, once the test ends, the experts who are captured by their opponents can still keep their lives. Our Yuan sect doesn't allow deaths to happen." Even so, people still felt weird. As for those old fellows from the Gu clan, they were angered to the point their faces were livid, and they were on the verge of spitting blood. They'd placed high hopes on Gu Liuhai, yet never had they imagined that he'd be suppressed by Lin Sun in such a humiliating manner as soon as the assessment had begun. Not only had all the treasures in his possession been stripped, even he'd been imprisoned. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to them. These were just small episodes. Defeating Gu Liuhai made Lin Sun feel no pleasure of revenge at all. As Lin Sun said before, he didn't want to leave one of the 3 elimination places to Gu Liuhai. In Lin Sun's mind, he should at least defeat some heavyweight opponents in the first round of assessment to relieve the hatred in his heart. Like Dongwang Shaoan, Mu Zunwu, Qi Qingshi, they could all be regarded as similar opponents. Lin Sun had studied the information of each opponent recorded in the Golden Jade slip. They were all Zhu Xie ancestors, but in terms of cultivation, the gap between them was very small. However, their origin weapons, battle techniques, mental states, willpower, and battle experience were different, causing their battle prowess to be completely different. So far, among the Zhu Xie ancestors, Lin Sun had only met one worthy opponent, Yi Chunjun, the successor of the 9th peak. Among the more than 100 Zhu Xie ancestors in this assessment, there were probably few who could compete with Yi Chunjun. In short, in this realm, Lin Sun was not afraid of anyone in this assessment. Therefore, he dared not to hide his aura. The battle between Lin Sun and Gu Liuhai only lasted for a few blinks of an eye, but the movement caused by it still attracted many Zhu Xie ancestors. Not long after, several figures arrived one after another, including men and women. When they saw the empty battlefield, many people narrowed their eyes in surprise. It seemed that they didn't expect that the battle would end in such a short time. Who was fighting here just now? No one knew. After that, They glanced at each other and became extremely vigilant. Not long after, they decided to disperse. If a melee broke out, there were bound to be more accidents. They weren't stupid, they wouldn't choose to fight recklessly at this time. The assessment lasted for a month, and there would be plenty of opportunities to kill their opponent. However, just as they were about to leave, Lin Sun, who had left earlier, returned and appeared in front of the Juxia ancestors. Lin Sun. It's that guy. Was he also attracted by the battle just now? The Juxia ancestors all had strange expressions. They stood where they were, but their chi was already running, ready to fight. Everyone, here's our chance. Why don't we work together and eliminate this bastard first? Someone suggested. Sure. That's great. It's a good chance indeed. The others hesitated for a moment, then agreed. In the distance, Lin Sun looked calm as he strolled over. Information about the 6 Ju Shui great ancestors appeared in his mind one by one. Each of them could be called a giant among their peers. They had the talent to rule over their peers, and their prestige was monstrous. However, in Lin Sun's heart, he was slightly disappointed, because his opponents didn't have the clansmen of the 8th Heaven's immortal giants. This guy isn't planning to fight against the 6 Juxia ancestors, is he? The practitioners in the outside world who had noticed this scene were also attracted by Lin Sun's return. At this moment, countless people were stunned and in disbelief. Who had ever seen such a bold Juxia ancestor? If it wasn't for Lin Sun defeating Gu Luhai as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood and revealing an extremely formidable combat strength, they couldn't help but wonder if Lin Sun had gone mad. 1 against 6? That was insane. The immortal giants were stunned, unable to believe what they had just seen. Lin Sun is really unexpectedly strong. Xiao Wenyuan chuckled. How much confidence did he have in his own strength to dare to do this? Fang Daoping's expression was indifferent, while Li Zhen's eyes were locked on Lin Sun. Dong Wangqing said expressionlessly, "The more you act like this, the more likely it is that something bad will happen." Back then, the master of the heart core was also this tyrannical. He broke into the 9th heaven alone, but in the end, his soul was destroyed. Xiao Wenyuan smiled and was about to say something, but his eyes suddenly lit up. The battle was about to begin. As Lin Sun's figure approached, the atmosphere in the area became extremely tense and oppressive. The 6 Juxia ancestors also found it hard to believe that Lin Sun dared to come here alone. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't he escape first? Lin Sun, you're not so arrogant to fight against the 6 of us, are you? Someone asked with a smile. Why not? Lin Sun stood in the void thousands of feet away. This answer made the 6 peak-level Emperor ancestors feel inexplicably uncomfortable. Could it be that in this guy's eyes they could be looked down upon? Arrogant! A golden-robed man sneered. Everyone, let's attack together and send this master of the heart core on his way. Boom! He took a step forward and his chi rumbled like thunder. The killing intent and power that he had been accumulating for a long time was released in the fiercest manner. The world shook. The golden-robed man made a seal with both hands, and a green flying sword tore through the sky like a shocking rainbow. Green Streak. This was the name of the golden-robed man's life emperor weapon. The sword light was like a thread, and it had unparalleled cutting power. Rise! Tut! Go! Almost at the same time, the other 5 Juxia ancestors also attacked, and each of them displayed their most powerful divine abilities and treasures. Between heaven and earth, the light of treasures was dazzling. Flying swords, halberds, Taoist seals, copper bells, jade rulers, alms bowls, and other treasures overflowed with different kinds of magical power, crushing the void and shattering the mountains and rivers. In the vast universe, there was a torrent of power that could destroy the world. The spectators in the outside world also cried out in surprise. They were shocked by this scene. One Juxia Emperor ancestor could look down on all the heroes on the Emperor's path, and he was invincible. Now there were 6 Zhu Xie Emperor ancestors attacking together. That scene was enough to make any great ancestor Zhu Shui despair. In the face of this attack, Lin Sun did not retreat. His expression was as calm and composed as before. Only his deep eyes were filled with a chilling aura. He took the initiative to attack. He took a step forward, and suddenly, his 5 Taoist bodies whistled out. Together with his original body, they each charged at one of the opponents. This sudden scene caused all the cultivators that were paying attention to this scene to open their eyes wide. Out-of-body incarnations? Boom! The world was turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. As soon as the battle began, the 6 Zhu Xie Emperor ancestors experienced what despair was. Crack! The golden-robed man's flying sword, Green Streak, was smashed into pieces the moment it came into contact with the abyssal sword cauldron. Before he could react, the Taoist sword from the abyssal sword cauldron whistled out, and with an irresistible force, it blew up all the defensive power that he had used. In the end, accompanied by a painful cry, the golden-robed man's stomach was cut open, and his blood sprinkled in the void. But he was not eliminated. Instead, when he was seriously injured, he was captured by Lin Sun and stuffed into the abyssal sword cauldron. A Zhu Xie Emperor ancestor was suppressed just like that. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. This was undoubtedly more shocking than the scene of Gu Liuhai's defeat just now. They could not believe their eyes. This was too strong. Looking at other parts of the battlefield, Lin Sun's doppelgangers showed power that was not inferior to that of his original body. They were swift and fierce, almost crushing their opponents, and they did not even have a chance to escape. This is not a Taoist doppelganger, but a Taoist doppelganger similar to the Fu family's supreme inheritance, the 4 symbols and 9 spirits. Each of them has combat power that does not belong to the original body. An old antique exclaimed, unable to calm down. P.S. The second one is a little later. Chapter 2782. Dong Wang Qiong, Qi Tingzi, Zhongli Chong, Mu Tsangjia, and the others were also shocked. Just like the Fu family, they were based in the 8th heaven. How could they not know how terrifying the Fu family's 4 symbols 9 spirits body was? Lin Sun's doppelganger obviously had the same effect. Compared to these undying figures, right now everyone was already stupefied, their minds stupefied. In their field of vision, Lin Sun's main body did not stop after suppressing the golden-robed man. He rushed forward and began to cooperate with his doppelganger to suppress the other opponent. Like corn being plucked, Lin Sun stuffed one Zhu Xie Emperor ancestor after another into the abyssal sword cauldron. In just a moment, the battle was over. The spectators were completely dumbfounded. They had thought that there would be a fierce battle, and that Lin Sun would pay for his bold actions. Who would have thought that the battle would be one-sided? The 6 Zhu Xie Emperor ancestors did not even have a chance to escape and were suppressed one by one. Including Gu Luhai, Lin Sun has already suppressed 7 opponents. That's enough for him to pass twice, but he didn't do so. Is he planning to suppress more opponents? Someone said in shock. The crowd in front of the sword palace of innumerable despair became restless. If Lin Sun continues like this, it means that the other participants will lose many chances to advance. An old man said with an ugly expression. Originally, Lin Sun could have passed the second round of assessment by killing 3 opponents. But now, he had no intention of leaving the battlefield of innumerable despair. Once he suppressed more and more opponents, it would reduce the number of people who could pass. This was naturally unacceptable to the immortal emperor clans. For countless years, the ancestral court of the Yuan sect had openly recruited descendants for the first time. For such a rare opportunity, all the immortal emperor clans with a bit of background were determined to get it. But if Lin Sun's existence in the first round of assessment squeezed out many people who could have passed, it would naturally be infuriating and infuriating. Elder Xiao, How can we let Lin Sun act so presumptuously in the first round of assessment? This is simply breaking the rules. Please stop him, Elder Xiao. An immortal emperor spoke, full of resentment. Instantly, the crowd's emotions surged and they all spoke up. That's right, he could have already passed the test, but he used such a shameless method to stay in the battlefield of despair. He clearly doesn't intend to give anyone else a chance. Such evil acts must be stopped and punished severely. Right, we can't tolerate this kid's wanton actions any longer. For a time, Lin Sun seemed to have become the target of public condemnation, causing the spectators in the arena to be in an uproar and restless, and their expressions were very strange. But because Lin Sun's performance was too shocking, it infuriated those eternal powers. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause the world to be shaken. Xiao Wenyuan was troubled by this scene, and he couldn't help but look at Fang Daoping as he said, "Brother Fang, what should we do?" Dong Wangqing interrupted, "What else can we do? Of course, we have to punish them severely. This child doesn't seem to have violated the rules, but he's clearly exploiting a loophole in the rules." Lin Sun was able to easily defeat 6 opponents by himself, and this caused him to be extremely shocked. He didn't even dare imagine how terrifying the might Lin Sun would possess if he were to step onto the eternal path towards the Tao with his natural endowment and resources. This caused Dong Wangqing to be unable to remain calm in his heart. As a member of the Donghuang clan, he naturally wasn't willing to see Lin Sun continue acting so arrogantly. The rules are set by us. If there's a loophole, it's also our responsibility. How can we push the blame onto a young man? Li Zhen coldly glanced at Dong Wangqing. Elder Donghuang, you better pay attention to your words. As a member of the Donghuang clan, you are also an elder of the Origin Clarity Pavilion. Dong Wangqing's expression was slightly unsightly. Fang Daoping, who had a calm expression as if he was an outsider, finally spoke at this moment. Rules are rules. Since this child didn't break the rules, there's no need for him to be punished. Xiao Wenyuan bitterly smiled. But our Origin Sex recruitment this time was originally for the sake of selecting some outstanding seedlings. If we allow Lin Sun to continue like this, I'm afraid there wouldn't be many who would be able to pass the first round of the test. Yeah, Elder Zhao's words are extremely true. Dong Wangqing agreed. From afar, many angry voices rang out, causing the atmosphere to become even more turbulent. Fang Daoping was silent for a moment before he spoke. Everything will be done according to the rules. Dong Wangqing instantly frowned. Xiao Wenyuan bitterly smiled for a while and also agreed. Li Zhen suddenly said, "You can tell Lin Sun about the movements outside. Whether he will restrain himself or not, it's up to him." Xiao Wenyuan immediately laughed. "That's a good idea." He looked at Fang Daoping, and seeing that the latter didn't object, he immediately felt relieved. He used a secret method, and a wisp of his divine sense flowed into the battlefield of despair. Lin Sun was counting the spoils of war. Each of these Zhu Xian ancestors had an extraordinary background. Many of them were nobles of the top forces in the seventh heaven. Naturally, they were rich. Lin Sun was surprised by the value of all kinds of cultivation resources gathered together. Of course, these spoils of war were already in his pocket. The rules didn't say that it was not allowed to loot the opponent's belongings. Just when Lin Sun was wondering whether he should continue to stay here to see if he could attract more opponents, a voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "My little friend, can you give me some face and be a little more careful in the next action?" Xiao Wenyuan smiled bitterly and helplessly. Lin Sun was stunned. "Senior, what do you mean?" Immediately, Xiao Wenyuan briefly told him what happened outside, and at the same time, he also told him the attitudes of Fang Daoping and Li Zhen. After hearing this, Lin Sun readily agreed. "Senior, don't worry. I won't attack opponents who have no grievances with me." This was not a compromise. It was to give face to Xiao Wenyuan, Fang Daoping and other big shots of Yuan sect. In the future, when he entered the ancestral court of Yuan sect, he also needed to establish a foothold. It was naturally beneficial to make friends with some big shot. Xiao Wenyuan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart and said, "Then I'll thank you in advance. Take it as I owe you a favor. If you're able to become the disciple of my origin sect, then I'll recommend a good place for you when the 9 great peaks choose a successor." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Senior, you don't have to be so polite. It's because I trust the rules of the ancestral court of Yuan sect that I chose to participate in the selection this time." Xiao Wenyuan also smiled and didn't say anything more. The matter was solved, which made him feel relaxed. He also told Fang Daoping and Li Zhen about Lin Sun's answer and attitude. He didn't mind putting in a good word for Lin Sun. It was a small favor. Fang Daoping nodded and said, "On this point, the ancestral court of Yuan sect does owe him a favor. If he can pass the 3 tests, I can recommend him to choose the 9 peaks for cultivation." Dong Wangqing narrowed his eyes and couldn't help glancing at Li Zhen, who had always been silent. It was Li Zhen's proposal that gave Xiao Wenyuan a solution to this matter. Because of this, Xiao Wenyuan liked Lin Sun. Although Fang Daoping was indifferent, it was obvious that he was also very satisfied with Lin Sun's attitude. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that he would recommend Lin Sun in person. All this made Dong Wangqing's heart surge with a trace of indescribable gloom. Time passed. In the different territories of the battlefield of despair, intense battles and killings began to take place one after another, attracting the attention of the people in the outside world. A battle between exterminating ancestral realms could naturally be said to be unprecedented. Not to mention all these exterminating ancestral realms that were participating in the test this time possessed great backgrounds, and all of them possessed secret techniques and treasures that far exceeded the ordinary. So once they fought, it would naturally draw the attention of countless people. However, when people watched the battles, they would subconsciously compare them with Lin Sun's previous performance. As a result, the originally exciting battles seemed inferior. Was it because Lin Sun's opponents were too weak? No. It was because Lin Sun's combat strength was too heaven-defying. He had the momentum and strength to sweep through all the ancestors of despair, which was especially shocking. On the contrary, these exciting and fierce battles lacked a kind of power that could shock people. This was called, "You don't know if you don't compare." Look, Lin Sun is being targeted by a group of opponents again. Suddenly, someone shouted, attracting the attention of all the people who were fighting in different battles to Lin Sun. This time, Lin Sun's opponents were 5. This caused everyone to be unable to help but break out in cold sweat for them. With the previous example, how could they not be worried about the fate of these 5 people? Especially the forces behind the 5 ancestors of despair. When they saw this scene, their faces were a little dark and their hearts were in their throat. Why did they have to encounter this malignant star? They could not help but be anxious and worried. They wanted to warn Lin Sun, but they could not. From the outside, they could see the panoramic scene in the battlefield of despair. But inside the battlefield of despair, the 5 people had no idea of Lin Sun's ferocity. At this time, when they saw Lin Sun alone, the 5 people could not help but show a strange expression. Killing intent surged in their eyes, and they were ready to make a move. "No, please don't. Get away from that evil heart seed. Fool, don't you know that Lin Sun dares to act alone because he has something to rely on?" In the outside world, some people were so anxious that they began to shout, causing many people to laugh. The onlookers see clearly, while the onlookers are confused. How could the 5 ancestors of despair know how terrible Lin Sun was? Just when people thought that Lin Sun would play the same old trick and suppress the 5 opponents one by one in an absolutely crushing manner, something unexpected happened. Facing the 5 ancestors of despair, Lin Sun took the initiative to turn around and leave. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Could it be that this ferocious guy had found his conscience? Chapter 2783. Battlefield of Despair. When they saw the tall figure in the distance, strange expressions appeared on the faces of the 5 great ancestors. Lin Sun. It was that guy. Before participating in the assessment, these 5 people had secretly formed an alliance through the connections between their clans. They had also contacted each other as soon as they entered the battlefield of despair, and had only just gathered together. They had not expected to run into Lin Sun by chance. Everyone, this is a big fish. Since we've run into him, we can't let him escape. The leader of the group licked his lips, fighting spirit burning in his eyes. Heh, that's how it should be. Someone laughed, eager to fight. Lin Sun's fame had overshadowed most of the immortals in the eternal true world. It made those in the same realm as him pale in comparison. If they could eliminate such a ferocious remnant of the core sect, there was no need to even think about it. The prestige of the 5 of them would rise to a whole new level because of this battle. Look, he's trying to escape. Suddenly, a handsome man let out a strange cry. In the distance, Lin Sun turned around and left. This action seemed to be telling the 5 great ancestors that he was running out of fear. After him. We can't let him go. The leader of the group shouted. He moved through the air and chased after Lin Sun aggressively. The other 4 did not dare to be slow. Each of them moved faster than the last, afraid that Lin Sun would escape. In the outside world, when he saw this, Xiao Wenyuan was speechless. He slapped his forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He knew very well that Lin Sun was giving face to the Origin sect's ancestral court. That was why he had not attacked the 5 great ancestors, whom he had no grudge against. But the 5 of them thought that Lin Sun was an easy target and chased after him like idiots. Li Zhen, who had always been silent, could not help but smile strangely and mumble, "He asked for it. He can't blame anyone else." At this time, the undying forces behind the 5 Zhu Shui great ancestors were panicking. Many of them roared in anger. These idiots! They're all worse than pigs. Why are they so stubborn? It was not easy for them to avoid a disaster, and now they're sending themselves to their doorstep. I just hope that Lin Sun can escape faster. Don't let those idiots catch up. The big shots of the 5 undying factions all looked like they were about to cry. They couldn't be blamed for losing their composure. The opportunity for the Origin sect's ancestral court to recruit successors was too precious. How could they not be anxious when they saw the disciples of their clan going to their deaths? A burst of laughter rang out. The scene before them was too dramatic. Don't be angry, everyone. We are onlookers and know that Lin Sun's fighting power is beyond imagination. But the 5 young friends don't know this at all. It's commendable that they have the heart to deal with Lin Sun, said one of the old antiques. As he spoke, he almost couldn't hold back his laughter, but he quickly shut his mouth. Another wave of laughter resounded in the surroundings, causing the atmosphere to become chaotic. In the eyes of those forces hostile to Lin Sun, all of this made them feel very uncomfortable. Dong Wangqiong said coldly, "Humph. What's so funny about that? If you're strong enough, even if you chase after them, why would you need to fear the remnants of Fang Siyuan?" His words caused the atmosphere to fall silent. I think so too. I'm also looking forward to the meeting between my junior brother and your Dongwang clan's sovereign ancestor Zhu Shi. At that time, let's see who will be eliminated. At this moment, Jun Huan laughed. Oh right, the bet I mentioned before still counts. It's nothing more than a slap in the face. Whoever wants to bet, you can sign up now. The atmosphere grew even more silent. Everyone exchanged glances. The previous battle had already proven how heaven-defying and terrifying Lin Sun was. If there were no accidents, he would definitely be able to enter the second round. Under such circumstances, who would have the guts to bet? The expressions of Dong Wangqiong, Zhongli Chong, Mu Tsangjia, Qi Tingzi, and the others darkened. They weren't stupid. How could they not see this? However, this was only the first round. They were still very confident that it wouldn't be easy for Lin Sun to become the successor of the Origin Sect's ancestral court. "Look, Lin Sun has been caught!" Screams rang out. The gazes of the crowd subconsciously turned over. Lin Sun halted his steps and turned around helplessly. Just as he was about to say something, the 5 sovereign ancestor Ju Shi already made their move, each stronger than the last. They didn't even give Lin Sun a chance to speak. Seeing this scene, the experts behind the 5 sovereign ancestor Ju Shi felt their vision darken. "It's over." Lin Sun was simply courting death. The battle erupted without any suspense. Although they had seen how Lin Sun suppressed the 6 sovereign ancestors earlier, when they saw him using the same method to suppress the 5 sovereign ancestor Ju Shi one by one, waves of commotion rose up in the outside world. Strong. Truly too strong. From the beginning until the end, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and he won this battle without any suspense. At this moment, the hearts of the 5 sovereign ancestor Ju Shi crumbled. They were filled with despair and even rage. Seeing how Lin Sun had cleanly plundered their treasures, the leader of the sovereign ancestor Ju Shi spoke with grief and indignation. "Lin Sun, you're so strong. Why did you choose to run the moment you saw us? Aren't you a little too despicable and black-hearted?" Lin Sun said helplessly, "I was going to let you go, but you insisted on pestering me. On the way here, I have warned you not to play with fire, but you scolded me for being arrogant and boastful. Who can you blame?" The leader in the red robe was stunned, his expression uncertain. When they were chasing, Lin Sun did say that they should stop immediately, otherwise they would be eliminated. But under the circumstances at that time, who would think that Lin Sun found his conscience? Who would have thought that he wasn't trying to scare them? "So you really don't plan on doing anything to us?" The leader in the red robe couldn't help but ask. The other 4 sovereign ancestors looked at Lin Sun with despondent expressions. Lin Sun laughed heartily. "Of course. You can leave now. Although I've taken your treasures, I'll leave my sovereign weapons to you. Take care." With that, he turned around and left. The group of sovereign ancestor Ju Shi was left dumbfounded and confused. Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared completely, they looked at each other and couldn't believe that all this was true. They couldn't help but breathe a long sigh of relief. Looking at their expressions, it had already become extremely complicated. "Isn't it said that he is extremely ferocious, cruel, and kills people like flies? But why is he so kind?" One of them said in a daze. "It's very strange indeed. He only needs to eliminate 3 of us, and he would be able to pass smoothly. However, he gave up such a superb opportunity and merely took our treasures instead of eliminating us. This is truly unexpected." A woman murmured, feeling that she couldn't see through Lin Sun. "Don't worry about it. Anyway, we've avoided the possibility of being eliminated for the time being. That's enough. Remember, if we meet Lin Sun again on the way, we must run away as soon as possible. We must not give him any chance to suppress us," the leader in the red robe said with a firm face. Seeing this, someone said angrily, "Elder brother, our treasures have been taken away. Even if we meet Lin Sun again, do you think he will still be interested in us?" His words made the others silent for a while. Suddenly, they felt very uncomfortable. In the outside world, the 5 immortal emperor clans were overjoyed when they saw this scene. They were so excited that they couldn't be described with words. This Lin Sun had really found his conscience. As for the others present, Lin Sun's actions made them unable to calm down as well. Obviously, Lin Sun was only targeting the enemy forces of Minuscule Mountain, and not all the participants of the test. He clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. In other words, if it was the enemy forces, they probably wouldn't be so lucky. "Dongwang Shaoan is so strong." Not long after, exclamations sounded out and attracted the attention of many people. In the Battle of 10,000 Desolations, Dongwang Shaoan had already defeated an opponent in an absolutely dominating manner, eliminating him from the competition. Dong Wang Shaoan wore a silver robe, had white hair at his temples, and handsome features. His figure stood ramrod straight like a spear, and his entire body was coiled with strands of terrifying green-colored laws that condensed into a black and white sun that circulated around his body, causing him to seem like a god and be extremely terrifying. He didn't use any treasures in this battle. He directly crushed his opponent with his own strength. The battle was overbearing, and he won beautifully. For a moment, the crowd was in an uproar. As time passed, more and more battles took place in the battlefield of despair. Some of the Xia Emperor ancestors displayed their skills, causing quite a stir. Mu Zunwu, for example, had black hair and purple eyes. His aura was as cold as ice, and he held a bronze spear in his hand. When he walked, he was silent, but when he fought, he was as fierce as an ancient beast. His opponent's body was smashed to pieces in less than a dozen rounds. He was so strong that it made people's hearts tremble. Qi Qingshi, for example, was bathed in the misty rain. She was as pure as ice and as pure as jade, like a fairy from the ninth heaven. The strength she displayed was not weaker than Dong Wang Shaoan or Mu Zunwu. Zhongli Feiyun, in short, the Xia Emperor ancestors, even though they were in the same cultivation level, displayed their heaven-defying strength, causing many to exclaim in admiration. This made Dong Wang Qiong, Qi Tingzi, and the other old antiques' expressions soften. In their eyes, although Lin Sun was heaven-defying, the Xia Emperor ancestors of their clans were not to be trifled with. Time passed slowly. On the third day of the first round of assessment, a Xia Emperor ancestor named Zhou Zhiji was the first to defeat 3 opponents and pass the first round, attracting the attention of countless people. It was well known. The Zhou clan of the seventh heaven. The Zhou clan was located in the Great Spirit Paradise, one of the 12 heavens. It was said that the ancestor of the Zhou clan was the sworn brother of Xian Feiling, the vice pavilion master of Sky Origin Pavilion. Therefore, when they saw that Zhou Zhiji passed the first round smoothly, their first thought was that as long as Zhou Zhiji passed the next 2 rounds of assessment, he would become a disciple of Sky Origin Pavilion. Chapter 2784. Zhou Zhiji's advancement caused quite a stir. But when they thought of Lin Sun, who had a high chance of advancing on the first day of the test, their excitement lessened. In the following period of time, more and more Xia Emperor ancestors passed, some of them dazzling figures. But because of this, more and more Xia Emperor ancestors were eliminated. Because every time one Xia Emperor ancestor passed, 3 Xia Emperor ancestors were eliminated. All of this caused the atmosphere to become even tenser. Some were wild with joy, others sighed. Some were happy, some were sad. Under such circumstances, even the old antiques who had lived for tens of thousands of years could not remain calm. No one knew better than them how rare it was to enter the ancestral court of the Yuan Church. It was precisely because it was so precious that they cared so much about it. On the 10th day of the first test, Lin Sun met another group of Xia Emperor ancestors. There were more than 10 of them, and it was a shocking sight to behold. At this moment, the immortal figures of the 4 Eastern imperial clans were nervous. They looked over, their expressions dark. Because the group of Xia Emperor ancestors that Lin Sun met were mostly from the 4 Eastern imperial clans. Only a few were from other immortal emperor clans. Even if we can eliminate him in this battle, we'll have to pay a price. An elder of the Nan clan looked gloomy. It wasn't just a price, it was a serious one. Everyone present had seen Lin Sun's performance over the past 10 days. From beginning to end, he had not been in any danger. Instead, it was the opponents that Lin Sun met who suffered. Those who had no grudges against Lin Sun were fine. At most, they would be stripped of their treasures and let go. As for the opposing Xia Emperor ancestors, they were all suppressed by Lin Sun. Although they were not eliminated, they became prey and were stuffed into the abyssal sword cauldron. Under such circumstances, although the Xie Emperor ancestors of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans were strong, they still had a chance to eliminate Lin Sun. But they would have to pay a heavy price. I should have killed this evil creature years ago, an old ancestor of the Gu clan said angrily. Gu Luhai of their clan was the first to be suppressed by Lin Sun in such a humiliating manner, causing him to feel extremely depressed in his heart. Saying all this now is useless. I only hope that when the war really breaks out, those clansmen will be able to sense the seriousness of the situation and decide whether to fight or leave. A patriarch of the Li clan heaved a long sigh. Although they all wanted to kill Lin Sun, they had to admit that Lin Sun was definitely an extremely dangerous enemy in the first round of assessment. At the same time, within the battlefield of despair, in a boundless mountain range, Lin Sun stood at the top of a mountain with his hands behind his back. Looking at the dozens of Xie great ancestors in the distance, he couldn't help but squint his eyes. When he recognized the person, he could not help but reveal a slightly strange expression. Powerhouses of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans. In the crowd there was a familiar face. That person wore a jade robe, and he had the bearing of a dragon and a phoenix. He was handsome and elegant, possessing an otherworldly bearing. His elegant bearing was dazzling. It was the Cloud Veil. When he saw this person, Lin Sun's heart surged with an uncontrollable desire to kill. Years ago, in the 9th Pass of Immortality, this person had entrusted the city lord Bai Jianchen to kill Lin Sun. Unfortunately, Bai Jianchen did not do so. Instead, he kindly reminded Lin Sun to be careful. Lin Sun would not forget this matter. In the past, Lin Sun had some doubts. He had no enmity with Yun Muzha, so why would Yun Muzha do this? Only later did he understand that it was because Yun Muzha was a member of the Yun clan. And the Yun clan was one of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans. Lin Sun. In the distance, when he saw Lin Sun alone, Yun Muzha was also startled. Then, an imperceptible cold light surged in the depths of his eyes. Long before the assessment, he had already had the idea of killing Lin Sun. First, because he was from the Yun clan. Second, because it had something to do with Duguyuran. It could be said that Yun Muzha, who originally hated Lin Sun, became even more determined to kill Lin Sun after he realized that Duguyuran's attitude towards Lin Sun was different. It's really him. Our luck is not bad. At the same time, the Zhu clan ancestors of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans also recognized Lin Sun. They all showed joy as if they had found their long-awaited prey. This is what it means to be destined by the heavens. This core evil deserves to be eliminated by us. Someone said leisurely. Look, this guy is not running away. Is he scared out of his wits? Someone laughed. No, he knows that there is no way out, so he is pretending to be calm. Someone analyzed calmly, complacently. Everyone, the remnant is right in front of us. No need to talk nonsense. Let's get rid of him quickly. A total of 14 Zhu clan ancestors walked together, which gave them full confidence to regard Lin Sun as a dying man. Lin Sun listened quietly and did not speak. In the past 10 days, most of the opponents he wanted to face were like this. It was as if he was alone and could be slaughtered by them. But the result? He was still alive and well, while those opponents were either robbed of their treasures or directly suppressed and stuffed into the abyssal sword cauldron. At this time, even though the number of opponents was unexpectedly large, it was not enough to make Lin Sun flee in fear. Everyone, please help me. I want to fight this person alone. Yun Muzha said indifferently, his voice shaking the mountains and rivers. From his body, there was a matchless aura of invincibility. Fool! Outside, the Yun clan ancestor's face turned green and anxious. Although he couldn't hear Yun Muzha's voice, he could tell what he was saying from the shape of his mouth. How could he not be anxious? How could Lin Sun be defeated one-on-one? Everyone present had a strange look on their faces. In the past 10 days, similar scenes had happened, but none of the Zhu clan ancestors dared to challenge Lin Sun alone like Yun Muzha. For a time, many people's eyes became filled with pity. One of the top 10 emperor ancestors of the seventh heaven, Yun Muzha, who was placed high hopes on by the Yun clan, was probably going to suffer a big setback this time. Don't worry, if Muzha is in trouble, the others won't just stand by and watch. The ancestors of the Nan clan, Li clan, and Gu clan all comforted him. At this time, hearing Yun Muzha's challenge, Lin Sun also smiled. He still didn't speak, but he didn't know what he was thinking. Seeing Lin Sun's smile, the Zhu clan ancestors of the 4 eastern imperial clans were very surprised. Ha, look at this guy's smile. Does he think he can escape in a one-on-one situation? Someone laughed, not hiding his sarcasm. Brother Muzha, why don't you let me take care of this kid? I promise I'll make him cry later. Someone's eyes were fierce. Let me fight instead. I don't want to miss such an excellent opportunity. Everyone, please do me a favor and fulfill my wish, okay? Someone said with a smile. They were actually competing to fight Lin Sun one-on-one. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the people watching the battle became more and more strange. Many people tried to hold back their laughter, lest they anger the people of the 4 eastern imperial clans. At this time, the people of the 4 eastern imperial clans were really going crazy. They have seen stupid people, but they have never seen a group of stupid people. The most annoying thing is that these stupid people are the clansmen they are most proud of. Many old antiques had the urge to cough up blood. If possible, they couldn't wait to rush in and beat up the Zhu clan ancestors. They had eyes but failed to see. In fact, it's not Yun Muzha's fault. They are in the battlefield of despair, so how could they know what Lin Sun has done in the past 10 days? What's more, they are a lineup of more than 10 people. In their eyes, Lin Sun, who is alone, really doesn't need to care too much. Everyone, give me some face, I owe you a favor. Yun Muzha frowned and stopped the others from fighting. Seeing this, the others didn't say anything. Boom! Yun Muzha stepped on the air like an immortal. His long hair fluttered in the wind, indescribably elegant and calm. In the eyes of any cultivator, Yun Muzha is absolutely a breathtaking existence, enough to lead the way on the Emperor's road. But now, seeing him resolutely fight Lin Sun alone, people have a strange feeling in their hearts, as if they were watching a little white rabbit foolishly clamoring to challenge a tiger. Lin Sun, I didn't take you seriously in the 9th Immortal Pass. I was too careless, but now I won't make the same mistake. Yun Muzha brushed his clothes and said indifferently, This time, I will use my strength to show you what a crushing defeat is, and what it means to say that there is always someone better. His words attracted the beautiful eyes of several peerless emperor ancestors, their hearts filled with admiration for Yun Muzha's unparalleled elegance. In the outside world, the clansmen of the Yun clan can't bear to watch. What's the point of talking at this time? What's the point of talking about demeanor and manners? One-on-one, it's fair. Lin Sun looked calm from beginning to end and said, Then don't talk nonsense, let's fight. If Yuran blames me in the future, I won't regret it. Yun Muzha sighed, and a trace of disappointment appeared in his eyes, which was immediately replaced by cold and indifferent killing intent. Clang! A snow-white Taoist sword swept out, and the sound of the sword resounded through the sky. Yun Muzha held the Taoist sword in his hand, and his clothes fluttered. His momentum suddenly became incomparably fierce, and the nearby void was cut into pieces by the terrible sharpness of the sword, producing dense explosions. I won't underestimate you. In this battle, I will use the strongest swordsmanship, so that you will never forget the shadow of defeat. In a calm and indifferent voice, Yun Muzha made his move. Whoosh! As the sword swept out, the world dimmed, and only a snow-white rainbow of sword chi was left, covering the whole universe. This was an incomparably amazing sword, which melted all the knowledge of Emperor Ancestor Yun Muzha, and his essence, chi, and spirit were almost perfect. Many of the Zhu Shui ancestors couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at the power of the sword. P.S. Don't the behavior of the outside world resemble you reading books? Well, I'll add more chapters tonight. Chapter 2785. The sword Chi was snow-white, covering the mountains and rivers. The breath of this sword was heart-palpitating. At any other time, it could cause great pressure to people in the same realm. It could be seen that although Yun Muja insisted on fighting with Lin Sun alone, he didn't neglect Lin Sun at all. In fact, as a Jiexia ancestor who could participate in the test of the ancestral court of Yuan religion, no one was stupid. Who didn't know Lin Sun's brilliant achievements in these years? Who dared to treat him as an ordinary person? Therefore, as soon as Yun Muja made a move, it was like a thunderbolt. As he said, he wanted to defeat Lin Sun with the most powerful swordsmanship. Boom! The world roared, the sword Chi steamed like the sea, and the nearby mountains and rivers collapsed. However, this amazing sword, which made other Jiexia ancestors admire, collapsed in front of Lin Sun inch by inch. From beginning to end, Lin Sun stood still and just flicked his fingers. Then, the snow-white sword Chi covering the sky collapsed like rain. This scene caused the eyes of everyone present to narrow, and the joy and smiles on their faces froze. Merely a single strike had allowed them to realize that something was off. "How dare you say that you want me to taste the taste of a crushing defeat?" Lin Sun sneered. In the distance, Yun Muja looked calm, and his sword heart was firm, unmoved. He took a deep breath, and the momentum around him became more and more powerful. His whole person was like a peerless sword, stepping in the air, and every step he took, he made a sword strike. Every single strand of sword Chi was stronger than the previous one. When he made 9 strikes, 9 brilliant sword Chi intertwined into the shape of 9 palaces, like a sword cage, covering the sky and the sun. 9 palaces sword cage. The most powerful swordsmanship created by Yun Muja with all his life's efforts. Boom! In an instant, the sword Chi stirred up the 9 levels of heaven. When the sword cage fell, it was like the punishment of heaven, imprisoning the enemy in the cage and executing him. This strike also attracted the attention of many people. Even the immortals couldn't help but nod secretly. But in the face of this blow, Lin Sun still remained motionless, and just stretched out his hand. A huge hand that blotted out the sky condensed in the void. Its 5 fingers were like pillars that propped up the sky, and its palm was like a boundless abyss. When it came crashing down, the 9-palace sword cage instantly produced a violent explosion. Then, under the dull gaze of the crowd, Lin Sun's big hand crushed the 9-palace sword cage. This, the Zhu Shui overlord ancestors of the 4 eastern imperial clans stared with wide eyes. It's one of the proudest killer moves of the cloud curtain genre, and it's famous in the entire 7th heaven. But now it had been crushed just like that. That shocking scene caused everyone in the outside world to gasp involuntarily. Although he had known that Lin Sun was very powerful, he didn't expect that he could resolve such an attack so easily. It was incredible. Still too weak. Lin Sun shook his head. There was no ridicule or disdain, and it seemed like he was casually sighing with emotion. However, the meaning behind his words caused the expression of Yun Muja, who'd always been composed, to change slightly, and a strand of rage arose in his heart. This guy that he didn't even put in his eyes before was now humiliating him like this. However, Yun Muja was extraordinary after all. He didn't let his anger get the better of him. Instead, he took a deep breath and attacked again. Boom! Visible to the naked eye, snow-white sword-shaped ancestor realm laws rushed out from his body. They were dense, intertwined, and circulated like a snow-white torrent of sword energy. And above his head, a majestic, blazing, and dazzling figure of will emerged. The sword intent that emanated from his body caused the heavens and the earth to tremble, the plants to turn to ash, and all things to collapse. This was his own will of the Great Path. And at this moment, after the will of the Great Path appeared, it completely fused into the Tao sword in his hand. Slash! With a cold and disdainful roar, Yun Muja slashed out with the sword that had exhausted all of his cultivation. The world suddenly trembled violently, as if it couldn't withstand the power of this sword. The nearby Ju Shui overlord ancestors subconsciously avoided it. The people in the outside world couldn't help but be amazed. This sword was indeed far more terrifying than ordinary. Right at this moment Lin Sun moved. He didn't retreat or dodge, and he charged forward to meet the attack. The abyss around him was obscure and unfathomable. It was like a black hole that circulated silently in the starry sky, and it swallowed all matter and light in the world. Rumble! The peerless sword Qi slashed down and collided with the abyss around Lin Sun, and it caused a world-shaking sound of friction and explosions that caused one's scalp to go numb. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, Lin Sun's figure was like a hot knife through butter as he forcefully crushed the sword that slashed down towards him, causing a rain of light to cover the sky. In the blink of an eye, he'd arrived in front of Yun Muja. Yun Muja's face turned pale while his pupils constricted, and his Tao heart that had always been firm like iron was shaken violently at this moment. He'd never imagined that the sword strike that he'd exhausted his entire lifetime of cultivation and fused with his will would actually be easily crushed by Lin Sun in such a manner. On the other hand, his Tao heart seemed to have been crushed along with it. Indescribable rage, frustration, and disbelief surged through his entire body, and it caused him to be completely dazed and unable to maintain his composure like before. How could this be possible? Now, tell me what it means to say that there's always someone better out there. Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and his indifferent voice was like a knife stabbing into Yun Muja's heart. Go to hell. Blue veins stood out on his forehead, and he drew his sword angrily. But what was faster than him was Lin Sun's hand, which directly grabbed his sword, turned the hilt upside down, and slapped Yun Muja's handsome face with the blade. Crack! This was even more terrible than a slap. Yun Muja's cheekbone collapsed, blood splashed, teeth peeled off, and hair disheveled. Before Yun Muja could be shaken away, Lin Sun had already grabbed his neck like a chicken, and said with a smile, I've been waiting to see you again a long time ago, but I didn't expect that after so many years, you're still the same. You haven't made any progress at all. In the distance, the faces of the Juetian emperors of the 4 eastern royal clans changed. They were shocked and doubtful, and a chill ran down their spines. Yun Muja was defeated just like that. For the first 2 moves, Lin Sun didn't move at all. For the third move, Lin Sun directly counterattacked. Not only did he shatter Yun Muja's strongest attack, but he also captured him alive. This shocked the Juetian emperors of the 4 eastern royal clans. They couldn't believe it. In the outside world, people were already used to this, but seeing Lin Sun capture Yun Muja in such a way, they still couldn't calm down. Especially the ancestor of the Yun clan. He was so angry that he had nowhere to vent, and his old face was extremely ugly. There's always someone better out there, Jun Huan said leisurely. His words made everyone's hearts tremble. Who was to blame? There were so many Juetian emperors, but he insisted on fighting Lin Sun one-on-one. Wasn't he looking for trouble? At this moment, Yun Muja was struggling madly. His eyes were cold and full of bitter hatred. He said, This is the battlefield of despair. Even if you win, you can only eliminate me. Haven't you realized your situation? You're no longer qualified to be eliminated by me, Lin Sun sighed. Yun Muja was stunned. Every word of Lin Sun's was devastating. Not qualified to be eliminated for Yun Muja, who had always been arrogant, this was like a heavy hammer that smashed hard on his state of mind. He felt an unprecedented sense of humiliation. Not qualified to be eliminated, Yun Muja felt his vision go black. He was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. This damned thing, he wants to destroy Muja's Taoist heart. In the outside world, the ancestor of the Yun clan roared. His killing intent soared to the sky. He was extremely furious. The others felt a chill in their hearts. Killing a person's heart. At this moment, people noticed that in the distance of the battlefield, a beautiful figure walked over. She was dressed in a green dress and looked as beautiful as a fairy. Seeing her appear, Lin Sun, who was about to continue concocting Yunmuja, was stunned. How could it be her? Surprisingly, the graceful figure of that peerlessly beautiful woman was Dugu Yuran. Brother Lin, can you do me a favor and let him go this time? Dugu Yuran's expression was full of hesitation. The scene was silent. All eyes were focused on Lin Sun and Dugu Yuran. No one had expected that at this moment, before the great ancestors of the 4 clans of the East royal family had come to rescue Yunmuja, Dugu Yuran had come to ask Lin Sun for mercy. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Jun Huan was stunned. He thought to himself that this little girl was very beautiful. Did she have an affair with Lin Sun? Then, Jun Huan showed a strange expression. Under such circumstances, this little girl's pleading might harm Yunmuja. Sure enough, the next moment, Yunmuja seemed to have gone mad. He roared angrily, Yuran, who asked you to plead with him? Why did you do this? Why? Even if I die, I won't be grateful. After saying that, he coughed up blood again. His head was spinning, and he felt like he was about to collapse. He had been defeated, but he had been seen by the woman he cared about the most in his life. This was humiliating enough. However, when the woman he cared about the most pleaded with the man who had defeated him, that kind of blow simply trampled his heart into pieces. Dugu Yuran's face changed slightly. She didn't expect such a thing to happen. Lin Sun sighed and said, Miss Yuran, do you know that your cousin tried to kill me with the help of Bai Jianxin when he was in the 9th Immortal Pass? Dugu Yuran was stunned. How is this possible? Lin Sun said, It's understandable that you don't know. If it weren't for Bai Jianxin's reminder, even I wouldn't know that your cousin was so cruel and despicable. Dugu Yuran stared at Yunmuja, who was dying and had disheveled hair, and said angrily, Cousin, is that true? Yunmuja's mind was in chaos, and he lost control of his state of mind. Hearing this, he said in a hoarse voice, Doesn't he deserve to die? I killed him to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Dugu Yuran bit her lip, and her eyes changed for a while. She seemed disappointed, sad and angry. After a long time, she took a deep breath and said, Forget what I said before. After that, Dugu Yuran turned around and left. An unprecedented sense of loss and disappointment welled up in her heart. She suddenly felt that she was too stupid. How could her cousin, whom she trusted most since childhood, do such a shameless thing behind her back? It was ridiculous that she stupidly stood up to plead with Lin Sun for him. Who knew how tormented she was when she plucked up the courage to plead with Lin Sun? P.S. More updates. Chapter 2786. Dugu Yuran left. Lin Sun looked down at Yunzhe, who was in a daze, as if he had lost his soul. Without further torture, Lin Sun stuffed Yunzhe into the abyssal sword cauldron and looked at the Juetian Emperor ancestors in the distance. Who else wants to play one-on-one? Lin Sun asked. The Juetian Emperor ancestors narrowed their eyes and looked at each other, feeling humiliated. With Yunzhe as an example, how would they dare to do the same? Lin Sun's words were undoubtedly sarcastic. If we fight together, I'm afraid you won't be a match for us, one of them said coldly. Yunzhe had been suppressed. This shocked and frightened them, but they did not flee in panic. First, it was because their states of mind were far stronger than ordinary people's. Second, it was because they had the advantage in numbers. They were unwilling to bow their heads and leave. The outside world had probably seen all of this. If so many of them fled now, not only would they lose face, but the prestige of the clans behind them would also be damaged. That was what they thought, and they had the confidence to do so. But in the outside world, the big shots of the 4 East royal clans who saw this scene trembled, their hearts so stifled they could hardly breathe. What was so shameful about choosing to retreat in the selection test of the Yuan sect? Why didn't they run? Why didn't they run? The feeling of frustration and humiliation made the big shots of the 4 East Royal clans feel unwell. Inevitably, a battle broke out. The 13 Zhu Shui great ancestors combined their powers and unleashed a frightening amount of power. Many of the people watching from the outside were shocked. Who in the outside world had ever seen such an earth-shattering scene? Unfortunately, the battle only lasted for a short while before it came to an abrupt end. Lin Sun used his 5 Tao forms at the start of the battle, working with himself. He did not hold back, directly using his strongest means to break through the encirclement of the 13 Juetian Emperor ancestors. Then, the scattered Juetian Emperor ancestors were like a flock of chicks targeted by an eagle. One by one, they were suppressed and stuffed into the abyssal sword cauldron. However, some of the Juetian Emperor ancestors sensed that something was wrong and fled in panic. Their faces were pale, and they wished their parents had given them 2 more legs. For them, the biggest variable in this battle was the 5 doppelgangers used by Lin Sun. Just dealing with Lin Sun alone made them feel fearful and pressured. Who could have thought that Lin Sun's 5 doppelgangers were not weaker than his own? In other words, the 13 of them were facing 6 Lin Sun. It was almost a 1 versus 2 situation. There was almost no hope of winning. In the realm of despair, it was forbidden to use the power of order. It was also forbidden to use forbidden secret techniques and treasures that surpassed the extinction progenitor realm. Under such circumstances, they didn't even have a chance to turn the tables with their trump cards. In short, in this battle, the 4 Donghuang tribes had lost miserably. In the end, only 4 of them had managed to escape. The other 10, including Yun Muzha, were all suppressed. Sighs could be heard from the outside world. Why bother to show off in front of Lin Sun? Looking at the faces of the great figures of the 4 Eastern imperial clans, they were already as black as the bottom of a pot, depressed to the point of coughing blood. This time, almost all the clansmen of the 4 clans who participated in the Yuan sect's assessment were captured in one fell swoop. Not being able to enter the origin religion's ancestral court was a lost opportunity, and it couldn't be measured with the word value. The outside world was in an uproar. At this time, even the immortal giants of the 8th heaven had to admit that Lin Sun, whom they regarded as a remnant of Fang Xiyuan, was indeed terrifying. At least in the extinction progenitor realm, he was almost invincible. This fact made their expressions gloomy. In the realm of despair, Lin Sun found a secluded place and began to rest. He first checked the captives in the abyssal sword cauldron. In the 10 days since the start of the test, starting from Gu Luhai, who was the first to be suppressed, to Yun Muzha and the other Juetian Dharch ancestors of the 4 Eastern imperial clans, the total number of people who had been suppressed had reached 24. This number was shocking to the eye. It should be known that there were only 100 or so extinction progenitors participating in the assessment this time. And now, the opponents suppressed by Lin Sun alone accounted for about 20% of the total number of people. If converted into the number of places that could be passed, there would be a total of 8. This also meant that in this round of assessment, the original 8 places that could be passed had been squeezed by Lin Sun alone. This not only made those enemies extremely angry, but also those who had no grievances with Lin Sun criticized Lin Sun in their hearts. Because there were only so many places, if they were squeezed out, it meant that there would be fewer places for others to pass the assessment. Of course, these forces who had no grievances with Lin Sun could not really hate him, because in the past 10 days, Lin Sun only suppressed those enemies. For those who had no grievances with him, he was still merciful, only plundering their treasures. At this time, Lin Sun felt that it was a bit wasteful. The 24 captives were all strong opponents. Although they would be eliminated in the end, Lin Sun always felt that it was too easy for them. So, how should he squeeze more value out of these captives? Lin Sun fell into deep thought. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed a group of powerful auras appearing in the distance. The identity and origin of these auras emerged in his mind. Lin Sun stood up and was about to leave because these people had no grievances with him. Who would have thought that the group of Zhu Shui ancestors would be so frightened that they fled for their lives? It's him, Lin Sun. This guy is too ruthless, suppressing those who are his enemies and plundering those who have no grievances with him. He hasn't lost a single battle so far. Let's go, let's go. These extinction progenitors fled faster than the other. Lin Sun could not help but be startled, but then he smiled. It seemed that these days, news about him had gradually spread. In the following time, Lin Sun continued to move about in the battlefield of despair. Just like before, he did not conceal his aura. But what made him dumbfounded was that as long as he encountered opponents along the way, before he could even make a move, they would flee as if they had been frightened, not giving him a chance to make a move. Even some of the experts from the enemy forces did the same. When they were still far away, they turned around and fled. Am I really that scary? Lin Sun was speechless. In the outside world, the people who had seen this scene did not know whether to laugh or cry. There were also many roars of laughter. Now, in the battlefield of despair, news of Lin Sun's achievements had spread, making him like a fierce beast. Everyone who saw him would flee at the mere sight of him. It was indeed a ridiculous and comical scene. They were all extinction progenitors, but wherever Lin Sun appeared, no one dared to oppose him. Even Xiao Wenyuan, who had presided over the first round, did not know whether to laugh or cry. But this made many of the immortal emperors heave a sigh of relief. To them, this was the right thing to do. At least they did not have to worry about Lin Sun robbing them or suppressing them. The battlefield of despair. As Lin Sun ran into a few more extinction progenitors, he saw a familiar figure. Miss Xiaoyuan, don't go, it's me. Lin Sun waved. Xiang Xiaoyuan was one of the figures that were preparing to escape. She did not flee, but when she saw Lin Sun, she smiled brightly. Brother Lin, we meet again. Lin Sun smiled back. Many years had passed, and Xiang Xiaoyuan was as elegant as ever. She wore a white robe, and carried a green and a purple saber on her back. He walked towards Xiang Xiaoyuan. Xiang Xiaoyuan's companions instinctively backed away, their faces full of vigilance, as if a great demon god was approaching. Xiang Xiaoyuan could not help but smile. Everyone, I've told you many times, Lin Sun and I are friends. With his personality, he would not make a move on us who have no grudges against him. Though she said this, her companions still stood far away, full of vigilance. Lin Sun ignored them and asked with a smile, Miss Xiaoyuan, how many opponents have you defeated? Xiang Xiaoyuan raised a finger and smiled bitterly. One, and it was thanks to my companions that I managed to defeat them. The first round had been going on for more than 10 days now. During this time, a few extinction progenitors had successfully passed the test and left the battlefield of despair. The extinction progenitors who remained in the battlefield of despair had fewer and fewer opponents, and the competition between them had become more intense. The most troublesome thing was that in the battlefield of despair, the extinction monarchs were moving in group. Even if they fought, it would be difficult to defeat their opponents in the shortest time possible. Xiang Xiaoyuan had 3 companions. One was from the Xiang Lu clan, named Lu Xianghen, and was her cousin. The other 2 were from other immortal emperor clans and were close friends with the Xiang Lu clan. The 4 of them had traveled together and had encountered many dangers. Especially in the last few days, the pressure had increased. Defeating their opponents was not an easy task. What made them even more nervous was that they had to be on guard at all times against being defeated by other opponents. But Brother Lin, you've become quite famous recently. Some of the opponents we met before turned green at the mention of your name. Apparently, you've robbed them like fat sheep. Xiang Xiaoyuan teased. After so many years, Lin Sun had changed even more. He was still the same person, but his achievements on the path of cultivation had left his peers in the dust. They should be grateful to me. After all, they only lost a few treasures, and were not eliminated from the first round. Speaking of this, Lin soon had an idea and waved his sleeve. The two captives tumbled to the ground. Miss Xiao Yuan, do it. Kill them and you'll be able to advance to the second round of assessment. This is all I can do for you in the battlefield of despair. Lin soon pointed at the two unconscious captives. Xiang Xiaoyuan was taken aback and caught off guard. Her companions widened their eyes in disbelief. Was this even possible? Chapter 2787. Those who witnessed this scene were in an uproar. This was the first round of the Yuan Church's disciple recruitment test, yet Lin Sun was giving captives to others to help them pass. This gave him a weird feeling. In the battlefield of despair, Lin Sun could not help but laugh when he saw Xiang Xiaoyuan hesitate. What? Are you worried that you'll be targeted by the immortal forces outside if you accept my help? Xiang Xiaoyuan took out a Dao sword and killed the two captive. She watched as their nameplates turned into a beam of light and disappeared. Only then did she laugh. This is the Yuan Church's test. It's a matter of killing each other. If I'm afraid, why would I participate in the test? Lin Sun felt warmth in his heart. Although they had not seen each other for many years, Xiang Xiaoyuan still saw him as a friend. With a flash of light, Xiang Xiaoyuan's nameplate appeared and enveloped her in an obscure rain of light. Then, she disappeared. She had passed the test and was transported out of the battlefield of despair. Lu Xianghan and the other two in the distance could not help but look envious. Passing the first round of the test so easily was something they did not even dare to imagine. Yet, it had happened to Xiang Xiaoyuan. Lin Sun suddenly said, "Everyone, if you're willing to pay with some valuables, I can give you some captives." Lu Xianghan and the others trembled. Their eyes shone with excitement. "Really?" Lin Sun smiled. "Of course. Take out all your treasures. I'll only pick some that I like. Then, I'll give you a chance to pass." The chance was right in front of them. How could some valuables compare to a chance to pass? Lu Xianghan and the others gritted their teeth and did as Lin Sun said. As the ancestors of the Zhu Shui Emperor and nobles from the immortal imperial clans, the treasures they had were naturally extraordinary. Lin Sun sifted through them for a while, then accepted some treasures and handed the four captives to them. Lu Xianghan and another person each got a captive, while the third person got two. Before long, accompanied by a strange fluctuation, Lu Xianghan and the other two passed and left the battlefield of despair. The people in the outside world were watching all of this, and their expressions were very interesting. Lin Sun had actually used such a solemn test as a place to buy and sell spots to pass. It was simply indescribable. The captives that Lin Sun had taken as slaves all had undying factions backing them. Seeing this, they were so enraged that they almost coughed up blood. "Elder Xiao, this child has committed such a despicable act. Are you not going to do anything about it?" One of the old antiques shouted angrily. The Juetian Emperor Patriarchs had already lost all face after being taken captive. They had been humiliated, and now they were being sold. Even if they managed to keep their lives, once they found out about what had happened, they would definitely have major problems with their mental states. That's right. Why don't we punish this evil remnant severely? Many angry voices rang out, mostly from the clans behind the captives. Xiao Wenyuan frowned and snorted. Lin Sun didn't violate the rules of the assessment. Why should he be severely punished? When other people set out in groups to defeat their opponents, didn't they also need to allocate quotas? Lin Sun is just acting alone. Of course, he can do whatever he wants to the enemies he captured. His words resounded through the entire place, suppressing all other voices. Some of the seniors were still unconvinced, and they were just about to say something when Li Zhen spoke coldly. "Are you all planning to question the rules of the Yuan sect's ancestral court?" Her words had a different meaning. They shut the mouths of the seniors. No matter how angry they were, they didn't dare to provoke the ancestral court. The storm was suppressed just like that. But before long, people were shocked by Lin Sun's actions again. In the battlefield of despair, Lin Sun used his great magic to build a Taoist field with huge rocks in a spacious area. There was a huge banner hanging in the training hall, auctioning the captives needed to pass the test. The highest bidder wins. Each word was written with iron strokes and silver hooks, elegant and unrestrained. In the Taoist field, Lin Sun arranged the remaining 18 captives in a row, as if they were goods on a shelf. Seeing this scene, the people outside were dumbfounded and completely confused. Holding an auction using the Juetian Emperor Patriarchs as goods and the battlefield of despair as an auction? Is Lin Sun crazy? If word of this gets out, heavens, is there anything in this world that Lin Sun doesn't dare to do? The entire field was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked by Lin Sun's actions. The immortals were dumbfounded. Auction? This Feng Siyuan remnant was crazy enough to auction off the Juetian Emperor Patriarchs in the first round of the test? Even the calm Feng Daoping's lips twitched imperceptibly. This kid was going to turn the world upside down. Xiao Wenyuan, who had been smiling all this time, could only smile bitterly. Even Li Zhen, who had been silent all this time, couldn't bear to watch. This Lin Sun was too good at stirring up trouble. Dong Wangqing said angrily, "Everyone, if we let this kid continue, the selection of the Yuan Church will become a joke. If word of this gets out, how will everyone in the world view our ancestral court? How will the other 3 ancestral courts view us?" Did he break the rules? This time, it was Feng Daoping who spoke. His casual words made Dong Wangqing's heart sink. He said, "No." Feng Daoping said no more. Dong Wangqing knew that it was hopeless for him to take this opportunity to attack Lin Sun. "Go ahead. The bigger the commotion, the more you'll cause. Anyone who wants to deal with you in the ancestral court will have to think twice about the consequences," Jun Huan thought. She had laughed so hard that her stomach hurt. Even she hadn't expected Lin Sun to do something like this. Those who were auctioned off would probably have problems with their mental states in the future. In the battlefield of despair. In just a few days, news of Lin Sun's auction had caused a great stir. At first, the Juetian Emperor Patriarchs couldn't believe it either. It was too unconventional, and it was beyond their imagination. But as more and more information proved that it was true, people finally dared to believe that Lin Sun had indeed held a shocking auction. For a time, the arena where the auction was held became the focus of attention. Ladies and gentlemen, there are only 9 days left in the assessment. I'm sure you know better than me how fierce the competition is now. As long as you can buy 1 or 2 captives, you'll be able to pass the assessment. All you have to pay is some money. In the Taoist field, Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and said aloud, "As you can see, there are only 9 captives left in this auction. If you don't seize the opportunity, you may regret it for the rest of your life." His voice spread everywhere. There were many figures standing far away from each other in the surroundings of the dojo. They were all extremely vigilant. Seeing this, Lin Sun promised boldly, "Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. If anyone tries to hurt you during the auction, he'll be my enemy. I promise I'll suppress him as a captive and auction him off to you. Of course, anyone who has a grudge against me is not qualified to participate in the auction. If anyone dares to make trouble, don't blame me for being rude." Soon, someone participated in the auction and made a bid. The rules of the auction had been spread all over the battlefield of despair, so Lin Sun didn't have to waste his breath. "This fellow offers 400 kilograms of immortal substance. Is there a higher price? Deal. Congratulations, fellow Taoist, for obtaining a spot to pass the test. Next, we'll auction a captive of the Nan clan. The starting price is 150 kilograms of immortal substance. You can also exchange it with treasures of equal value. Lady, please behave yourself. I don't like dual cultivation. Please don't tempt me with your beauty." Is there anyone else? In the following time, Lin Sun's voice kept ringing out. It gave people the feeling that they weren't in the fierce competition of the first round of the exam, but rather the scene of a top-notch luxurious auction. The people in the outside world were already stunned. Such an absurd thing had actually happened in the first round of the Yuan Church's Ancestral Court's assessment. They even felt that it was unreal. The Yuan Church's Ancestral Court. What a transcendent place it was. The gathering of the Yuan Church's successors had attracted the attention of the entire eternal world. But now, Lin Sun was holding such an auction in the middle of the assessment. This feeling was really indescribable, far away from the auction. Dong Wang Shaoan, who was dressed in a silver robe, had white hair at his temples, and had handsome features, looked indifferently at what was happening in the distance. Brother Shaoan, why don't you kill this remnant of the Heart sect? A deep and heroic voice rang out. Dong Wang Shaoan did not need to look to know that the person who spoke was Mu Zunwu. Why don't you attack? Dong Wang Shaoan asked casually. He placed his hands behind his back, and his demeanor was calm. Wisps of black and white laws turned into two suns that quietly circulated around him. The timing isn't right, Mu Zunwu said casually. He had black hair and purple eyes. His presence was like ice, and he held a bronze spear in his hand. When he was not moving, he was as heavy as a mountain, but once he moved, he was as fierce as a primordial god of berserkers. You're worried that if you fight with him, it will affect the next round of assessment, right? Dong Wang Shaoan said. Aren't you the same? Mu Zunwu asked. Dong Wang Shaoan was silent for a while before he said, He is indeed a rare and powerful opponent. My goal this time is to enter the Yuan Church's Ancestral Court. There's no need for me to cause trouble during the assessment. Besides, don't you think that this auction is more like a trap to intentionally attract those who want to kill him? Once he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Not far away, Mu Zunwu's eyes sparkled. In the beginning, he also thought that this was a farce. He thought that Lin Sun's combat power might be heaven-defying, but his actions were too exaggerated. But was it really that simple? Dong Wang Shaoan's words hit the nail on the head. There was a high possibility that this auction was a trap that Lin Sun had intentionally set up to attract those who hated him to come. P.S. I'll continue updating at night. Literature Hall. Chapter 2788. What Mu Zunwu didn't understand was why Lin Sun dared to provoke them in this way. Wasn't he worried that people like Dong Wang Shaoan and himself would kick him out? Or perhaps he was confident enough to deal with the worst-case scenario? Thinking of this, Mu Zunwu suddenly narrowed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he finally suppressed his killing intent and turned away. At the auction in the distance, Lin Sun frowned imperceptibly. Was it so difficult to kill a few important people? As Dong Wang Shaoan and Mu Zunwu speculated, the core purpose of Lin Sun holding such an auction with great fanfare was to lure his enemies. Because there was not much time left for the first round of assessment, Lin Sun still hadn't met those opponents whom he had turned into heavy characters. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun had to find another way. Hence, this auction was held. Before, when Dong Wang Shaoan and Mu Zunwu appeared, Lin Sun was also a little excited and ready to fight with them. But what he didn't expect was that they left one after another. Obviously, they didn't intend to fight with him at this time. Lin Sun vaguely felt that this was not because they were afraid, but because they calmly analyzed the pros and cons. However, Lin Sun didn't care about this. After all, this was just the first round of assessment. Even if those enemies entered the ancestral court of Yuan Church, it didn't matter. Anyway, everyone would be in the ancestral court of Yuan Church, and there would be plenty of time to compete. In the outside world, people also keenly noticed the movements of Dong Wang Shaoan and Mu Zunwu. When they saw them leave one after another and didn't attack Lin Sun, many people showed disappointment. Were they also afraid of Lin Sun and didn't dare to fight with him? If so, who could suppress Lin Sun in this assessment? There were also some seniors who saw through the mystery and couldn't help but nod secretly. This was the wise choice that Dong Wang Shaoan and others should make. Especially Dong Wang Qing. When he saw Dong Wang Shaoan leave, he couldn't help but twist his beard and smile. Shaoan is really good. Xiao Wenyuan said with a smile. He is indeed a promising young man. Li Zhen twitched his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but he chose to remain silent in the end. But this subtle action caused Dong Wang Qing to feel rather uncomfortable in his heart. What do you mean, Li Zhen? Why do you have to be so secretive? Of course, Dong Wang Qing knew that if Li Zhen were to speak, she would definitely not say anything nice. At the auction, Lin Sun ended the auction when there were only 3 captives left. The other ancestor, Zhu Xian ancestor, who was still waiting for a chance to bid on the item, left one after another. Lin Sun stood on the Taoist field and glanced around. After seeing no enemies, he couldn't help sighing. He knew that if he continued to stay in the battlefield of despair, he wouldn't have much of a chance. Without further hesitation, Lin Sun defeated the 3 captives one by one, successfully passing the test and vanishing from the battlefield of despair. He's finally gone. The outside world was in an uproar. Seeing Lin Sun disappear in the first round of assessment was like sending away a plague. The undying powers all felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, their faces beaming with joy. Fang Daoping, Xiao Wenyuan, Li Zhen, and Dong Wang Qing heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. It couldn't be helped. Lin Sun was too good at causing trouble. From the first round of assessment, he didn't play by the rules and did many unimaginable things. For example, robbing and suppressing his opponent. For example, selling the captives or even holding auctions. It was as if there was nothing he didn't dare to do in the first round of assessment. This made people wonder what would happen next if Lin Sun chose to stay in the first round of assessment. My little junior brother passed the test. Who said that he was destined to be eliminated? Jun Huan said. Many people looked towards the old monsters among the immortal giants of the 8th heaven. It's just the first round of assessment. Don't be complacent too early. Dong Wang Qiong snorted coldly. Jun Huan said straightforwardly, then I'll ask you again after the 3rd round of assessment is over. Thousand Despair Sword Palace. In the top hall, Lin Sun passed the first round of assessment. After leaving the battlefield of despair, he appeared in the main hall. Swoosh. When Lin Sun appeared, the eyes of all the Juetian emperor ancestors who had passed the test all focused on him. Everyone's expression was very subtle. During the period of time, Lin Sun's performance in the first round of assessment was already known to them. Now that he appeared, all kinds of emotions surged in their hearts. But fortunately, no one provoked him at this moment. Brother Lin. Xiang Xiaoyuan waved her hand. Beside her, Lu Xianghen and the others were also there. When they saw Lin Sun, they all smiled. Lin Sun smiled and nodded. He was about to sit with Xiang Xiaoyuan and the others, but his eyes inadvertently caught sight of a beautiful figure sitting alone in the corner of the hall. He couldn't help but sigh. He walked straight over. Miss Yuran. Lin Sun said softly. That beautiful figure was Dugu Yuran. She was sitting cross-legged by herself, and her beautiful and fair face was covered in a dull and bleak expression. Obviously, the matter of the cloud curtain was a great blow to her. She raised her clear eyes and said, Brother Lin, you actually took the initiative to find me. In the past, in the vast 1,000 battle domains, you were afraid of avoiding me. Lin Sun's eyes drifted. In the past, because of Dugu Yuran's appearance in the vast 1,000 battle domains, many lascivious men often chased after her. Inevitably, it caused a lot of trouble, which gave Lin Sun a headache at that time. But now, things had changed. Thinking back, Lin Sun also knew that it was not Dugu Yuran's fault. After all, her status was extremely high, and her appearance was extremely outstanding. It was difficult not to attract the pursuit of those young talent. Are you still angry with me because of what happened to your cousin? Lin Sun asked. Duguyuren shook her head. How can there be no battles in the assessment? I just didn't expect that my most trusted cousin would be such a person. Yunmuja was ravaged by Lin Sun, which made her feel bad. After all, they grew up together and were childhood sweethearts. When she learned that Yunmuja wanted to kill Lin Sun in the 9th pass of immortality, Duguyuren felt even more upset. She appreciated Lin Sun very much. Over the years, she had been paying attention to Lin Sun's deeds. She was still thinking about what would happen when she met Lin Sun in the territory of the ancestral court of Yuan Church. But she never expected that when they met, she had to take the initiative to plead for Lin Sun's mercy because of Yunmuja's suppression. It was really uncomfortable for her, who had always been free and unfettered. But she never expected that there was a reason for Yunmuja's suppression. What made her even angrier was that Yunmuja not only didn't appreciate it, but also scolded her for not meddling in other people's business. At that time, she had completely fallen into a dilemma. She was in a state where she was in a dilemma, and she was extremely disappointed in her heart. Even now, she couldn't completely calm down. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun said, I don't know what kind of person Yunmuja is. I only know that his surname is Yun, and he comes from Yun clan, one of the 4 Eastern royal families. Even if he was lucky to survive this time, he and I are destined to be enemies in this life. Duguyuren sighed softly. I know that you are the successor of Fong Siyuan. Even if you give in, my cousin will not show any mercy. Brother Lin, if you think of me as a friend, you don't have to comfort me anymore. I'm not as fragile as you think. I just want to be alone. Lin Sun nodded and said, Okay. There are 2 more rounds of assessment. You should adjust your state of mind as soon as possible. Don't be affected by it. Duguyuren nodded. Lin Sun didn't say anything more. He turned around and left. He sat cross-legged near Xiang Xiaoyuan, and there was an inexplicable sense of loss in his heart. It seemed that because of Yunmuja, the relationship between him and Duguyuren had suddenly become a little estranged. There were only a few days left in the first round of assessment. As Lin Sun left the battlefield of despair, the number of Joseon Emperor ancestors who had successfully passed the assessment had reached 19. According to people's estimates, there were probably less than 30 Joseon Emperor ancestors who would eventually enter the second round of assessment. This was because there were now less than 30 people left in the battlefield of despair. Sure enough, when the first round of assessment ended, only 27 out of more than 100 Joseon Emperor ancestors successfully entered the second round of assessment. In other words, the first round of assessment alone had eliminated more than half of the Joseon Emperor ancestors. It was worth mentioning that some Joseon Emperor ancestors who had not been eliminated by the first round of assessment did not manage to defeat 3 opponents and ultimately failed to enter the second round of assessment. The second round of assessment began the day after the first round of assessment ended. This round of assessment would be held in the huge Taoist field in front of the Sword Palace of Despair. Li Zhen, you will be in charge of the second round of assessment. Fang Daoping instructed. Li Zhen nodded and walked straight to the center of the huge Taoist field. His hair was like a halberd, and his body was covered with a bronze luster. Following his appearance, the noisy scene in the vicinity immediately quietened down, and there was not a single sound to be heard. Where are the core disciples of the 9 peaks? Li Zhen asked in a low voice. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, beams of dazzling divine rainbows descended from the sky. When they landed on the Taoist field, they immediately turned into 9 men and women, each with an amazing aura and a peerless demeanor. The Taoist field stirred. These 9 people were the core disciples from the first peak to the 9th peak of the Yuan sect's ancestral court. Although each of them was at the Joseon ancestor realm, everyone could see that these 9 people were far stronger than normal Joseon ancestor realm experts. Compared to them, most of the Joseon ancestor realm experts who participated in this round of assessment paled in comparison. This difference was extremely subtle. It was as if these 9 people were already invincible in this realm and could break through to the immortal realm at any time. Most of the Xie Ancestor Realm experts who participated in this round of assessment lacked this kind of invincible aura. Only Lin Sun, Dong Wang Shaoan, Qi Qingshi, and Mu Zunwu had the same aura as them. Of course, ordinary people would not be able to tell the difference. After all, they were all at the Xie Ancestor Realm. It was really difficult to tell the difference from their aura and aura. And now, these 9 core disciples from the 9 peaks would become the gatekeepers of the second round of assessment. P.S. Send more updates to me. Chapter 2789. 9 core descendants from the 9 peaks stood on the Taoist field. All eyes were on them. Soon, the 27 Zhuyan ancestors who participated in the second round of assessment appeared in front of the gate of the Sword Palace. When they saw the 9 gatekeepers, the rules of the second round of assessment emerged in their minds. At the beginning of the assessment, they would choose a gatekeeper with their nameplates as proof. As long as the participants could hold on for a quarter of an hour, they could pass the test. Otherwise, they would be eliminated. Like the first round of assessment, the power of order, secret treasures and external forces beyond the scope of Zhuyan Ancestor were not allowed in the second round of assessment. They could only fight with their own cultivation. Even if they can't defeat the gatekeeper, they can pass as long as they can hold on for a quarter of an hour. Someone keenly noticed the key of this assessment. If they could pass the test by holding on for a quarter of an hour, it would be enough if they didn't make any mistakes in the battle. Thinking of this, many people felt a lot more relaxed. The 9 gatekeepers were all core descendants of the 9 peaks. Although they were all in Zhuyan Ancestor Realm, everyone knew that those who could become the core descendants of the ancestral court of Yuan sect were destined to be more powerful and abnormal than the other. However, what Lin Sun and the other 27 people were not sure about was which of the 9 gatekeepers would be their opponents in the assessment, because the opponents were chosen according to their nameplate. This was very mysterious. According to the rules, each of the 9 gatekeepers wore a jade talisman, which could sense and fit with the nameplates of the participants. In order to prevent cheating, the jade talismans of the 9 gatekeepers were randomly distributed by drawing lots. At the end of the day, in the arrangements of the Yuan sect, this was the fairest way. Suddenly, Lin Sun was surprised to see a familiar face among the 9 gatekeepers. The man was dressed in plain clothes, with long hair coiled into a bun. His appearance could only be said to be a little delicate, but his temperament was extremely outstanding. Yuan? He was as tall as a mountain, absolutely outstanding. It was Yi Chunjun, the successor of the 9th peak. In the mysterious forbidden area, Lin Sun had fought against Yi Chunjun's 3 strikes of fate, which left a deep impression on him. Clearly, Yi Chunjun was representing the 9th summit this time as one of the guardians. At the same time, Yi Chunjun also saw Lin Sun with a strange look in his eyes. He thought to himself, "Don't let this guy fight with me." At least, he didn't want to fight with Lin Sun at this time. It was not that Yi Chunjun couldn't afford to lose, but he was not ready to fight with Lin Sun again after the last fight. Since he wasn't prepared, it wouldn't be good if he lost. Yi Chunjun even had to consider how he should go all out to hold on for a quarter of an hour if he really fought with Lin Sun. If others were to find out about this, they would surely be dumbfounded. Wasn't holding on for 7 minutes something that the participants should be thinking about? You're a guardian, how can you be so unambitious? Very quickly, Li Zhen spoke in a deep voice. You know the test rules better than me. Whoever dares to cheat in the test will be expelled. As soon as he finished speaking, the test began. Zhou Zhizhi, who was the first to pass the first round of the test, was the first to enter the training hall. In the following test, Lin Sun and the others would also enter the training hall one by one according to the order in which they passed the first round of the test. Zhou Zhizhi was thin and honest, but his eyes were extraordinarily intelligent. His gestures were not breathtaking, but he gave people a feeling of being as calm and unshakable as the sea. Buzz. The nameplate on his body emerged and produced a strange wave. With a gentle sweep, it immediately resonated with the jade pendant of a guardian. Hua Qinghe, the core descendant of the fifth summit. Hua Qinghe was not an ordinary person. He was ranked in the top 5 core descendants of the fifth summit and was a living monster with powerful combat capability. Zhou Ziji's lips twitched. Obviously, he also felt that it was very tricky. To everyone's astonishment, when the first battle began, Zhou Ziji's figure, which was as heavy as a mountain, became extremely flexible. Suddenly, he turned into countless strands of thunder and lightning, flowing and flashing in the huge training hall. Ordinary people couldn't tell where his real body was at all. Infinite thunder body. The body turned into endless thunder and lightning. What a smart man! Many people exclaimed. They saw through Zhou Ziji's fighting strategy. He defended in a roundabout way until he held on for a quarter of an hour. He didn't want to make any mistakes. However, Hua Qinghe wasn't weak either. He manipulated wind and fire, raging in the training hall like a flaming hurricane, crushing the constantly flowing and flashing thunder and lightning. Although the training hall was huge, its scope was limited, which also limited Zhou Ziji's space to dodge. Before long, Zhou Ziji was forced to show his real body and could only fight with Hua Qinghe with all his strength. The battle between the two was naturally incomparably intense. But everyone could see that Zhou Ziji was at a disadvantage. As time went on, he was injured and almost suppressed on the spot several times. This made the spectators shudder with fear. Zhou Ziji's strength had already been seen in the first round of the test. The fact that he could defeat 3 opponents and enter the second round of the test had proved his extraordinariness. But now, from the moment the battle began, he fell into a passive situation. Who wouldn't be shocked? Hua Qinghe, the core disciple of the fifth peak, was already so powerful. No one dared to imagine how many peerless geniuses were hidden in the 9 peaks of the Yuan sect. In the end, when Zhou Ziji was seriously injured and couldn't hold on any longer, the quarter of an hour was up. Hua Qinghe couldn't help but frown, but he immediately stopped and said, "If you can pass the 3rd round of the test, you can choose to come to the 5th peak." Zhou Ziji wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. Sure. He cursed in his heart. You beat me to this state, why the hell would I go to the 5th peak? Don't even think about it. Soon, Zhou Ziji was taken away and entered the Thousand Despair Sword Palace to recuperate. The second powerhouse to participate in the test had already arrived at the training hall and immediately caused a sensation. Because the second one to appear was Qi Qingshi. She was a beautiful woman bathed in the misty rain, ethereal like an immortal. She was a fairy from the Qi clan of the 8th heaven. She was also one of the few people with the most amazing performance in the first round of the test. Her opponent was Gu Zheng, a core disciple of the 6th peak. His combat power was not weaker than Hua Qinghe of the 5th peak. It was worth mentioning that Gu Zheng came from the Gu clan, one of the 4 major clans of the East Emperor. When the battle began, Qi Qingshi attacked at the first possible moment. No one had expected that a celestial maiden with an indistinct and tranquil bearing like a misty rain would attack so swiftly and fiercely. Caught off guard, Gu Zheng also fell into a passive position and could only passively defend and defend. This scene also caused an uproar in the audience. But soon, Gu Zheng turned the situation around little by little and began to counterattack. After all, he was a core disciple of the 6th peak and was extraordinary. The two of them fought fiercely, and they seemed to be on par with each other. Until the quarter of an hour there was still no winner. But the test was over. Gu Zheng sighed and said, "Miss Qingshi is powerful. Even if the battle continues, I'm afraid it will be difficult to determine the winner in a short time. Thank you for letting me win." Qi Qingshi cupped her hands slightly. The The spectators couldn't help but be amazed by the elegance shown by the two of them. This was a real fierce battle, but unfortunately, it only lasted for a quarter of an hour, and the winner was not really determined. The third to fight was a Zhu Xian ancestor named Wang Yi. Unfortunately, he didn't last for a quarter of an hour and was completely defeated by the gatekeeper. Even his divine soul was suppressed and he couldn't struggle to resist. The fourth to fight was, as time went by, fierce duels were staged one after another, which also caused a burst of exclamations from the audience. Some people were eliminated. Some people passed smoothly. Lin Sun had been watching the battle, and his expression was very calm from beginning to end. However, when he saw the battle of Xiang Xiaoyuan, he was also shocked. It was too tragic. At the end of the quarter of an hour, Xiang Xiaoyuan was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Even at the last moment, her spirit was almost destroyed. Several times, Lin Sun felt that he couldn't bear to watch. In the end, although Xiang Xiaoyuan won the test, her body and spirit were seriously injured, as if she would die at any time. After the duel, she was immediately taken to the palace of Wanjue's sword to recuperate. The one who defeated Xiang Xiaoyuan was a core descendant of the first peak named Nan Xiangqi, who ranked in the top 3 and was a little stronger than Hua Qinghe and Gu Zheng. According to Lin Sun's judgment, Nan Xiangqi's battle strength was definitely one of the strongest among the 9 gatekeepers. It was really not easy for Xiang Xiaoyuan to last for a quarter of an hour. If it weren't for her strong willpower and fearlessness of death, she wouldn't have lasted until the end. Nan Xiangqi said coldly, looking extremely conceited. Not long after Xiang Xiaoyuan passed the test, Dugu Yuran appeared. It was the first time that Lin Sun saw Dugu Yuran fight. Her opponent was very strong, but she wasn't weak either. The battle strength she showed surprised Lin Sun. Because Dugu Yuran's fighting method involved the use of the willpower of the divine soul, which was mysterious and unpredictable. Whenever she encountered danger, she could always use the incredible divine soul power to shake her opponent's fighting will and thus avert danger. This battle also caused many spectators to exclaim in admiration. Lin Sun even heard Xiao Wenyuan sigh with emotion, the divine refining 9 darkness skill, the supreme inheritance that Deputy Pavilion Leader Dugu Yong exchanged for at such a high price. It turns out that it was prepared for this junior, Dugu Yong. Lin Sun remembered that when Jun Huan introduced the ancestral court of Yuan Church, he once said that one of the 3 deputy pavilion leaders of Yuan Void Pavilion was Dugu Yong. It was also at this time that Lin Sun knew that Dugu Yuran had such a relationship with the ancestral court of Yuan Church. And according to Xiao Wenyuan, the divine soul skill that Dugu Yuran displayed at this time was obtained by Deputy Pavilion Leader Dugu Yong at a great price for Dugu Yuran. There was no doubt that Dugu Yong thought highly of Dugu Yuran and even doted on her,